Abby, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, good. I was having trouble with my mic, so.
Okay, you're good. I see Randy Bruce is on too. You made it on time, Randy. I don't think we have any other commissioners who have joined us yet.
Abby,
Hi, Mayor, how are you?
good, good. Boy, it took a long time. We're just waiting, but it's good it's on now.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure why. I've had the meeting open for about 5 minutes.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Mhm.
Anyway, so we are now, so that's all what matters, so.
So we
So,
will not expect Commissioner Ramsey tonight. He's
Oh,
not able to make it.
okay. Well, let's remember to honor Jennifer. So this is her more or less last meeting, right? Unless she wants to continue,
Mhm.
which she's welcome to. She's
She-
still welcome to.
We learned that she's taken a new position recently, so maybe she'll be willing to talk about that.
Oh,
Mark found out about it through another public meeting that he attended, so the cat's out of the bag.
so she might continue to work then or not? Continue to be on plan commission?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it affects her decision on plan commission or not, but she did, she took a different position within state government.
Oh, well, still with DOT or, well, anyway, so.
Yeah,
new
I'll let her
position.
I'll let
How
her
about
share.
that? Well, we will ask her, so.
Oh, and I see she's joining.
Yes. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
We hear that there's excitement in your life. You have some new position now, right?
Yes, there is. Yeah, I am the new bureau director for the Bureau of Transit, Local Roads, Rails, and Harbors at Wisconsin DOT.
So you moved 2-3 steps up. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, one step up. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Kurt.
We want more money for local roads.
On May 19th, there will be a YouTube presentation on the different local road funding programs, and hopefully you guys got an invite in the last few days on that. So,
Well, just send some to Middleton. That's the way to go. We got 1 more minute. If there's anything
Congrats,
you can
Jen.
tell us how we can get that
Congrats,
bag
Jen.
of money to.
thank you, Mike.
Yeah. You moved up from section chief to bureau director. That's
Yep. Yep. So there's 3 different sections: local programs, rails and harbors, and transit. Yep.
So knowing you got a new position, so you really would want to continue with the plan commission then, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? What did you say?
You would like to continue on this super duper plan commission, right?
I'm sorry to say I won't be able to do that. My time is going to be pretty busy. So unfortunately,
Wow, despite being from section to bureau chief. All right, well, that's how it is. So
she's going to be a lot more busy, especially during budget season.
That's all seasons.
Okay, well, it's 7 o'clock.
That's a
I'm gonna
12-month
call the
thing.
meeting of, Abby, do we have everybody other than?
Everyone who told me that they would attend is present. We're only missing Commissioner Ramsey, but he's unable to attend this evening.
All right, the way to go. So I'm gonna call the meeting of Middleton Plan Commission for Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 to order. And the first item is the roll call.
Bruce,
Here?
Murray,
here.
Paulson,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here,
Slavish,
Here.
and Brar is present. Ramsey is absent.
All right. Okay, so the next item is actually the public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing for General Implementation Plan, GIP for Newcomb Residential Development 1312 John Q. Humans Drive. Anybody who would want to speak, this is a good time. Please raise your hand and I will acknowledge you. I do not see any raised hands right now. Abby,
Mayor, 1 second.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah, Don Powell.
Don Powell.
Yes. Go ahead, Don.
Okay. Am I coming through okay?
We can hear you.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, City of Middleton. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. Well, first of all, my name is Don Powell. I'm the president of UW Healthcare Direct. And we are situated in the property directly west of the lots that Brett and his project are planning on, or the subject matter for the discussion. And I guess I'd like to bring up that I'm pro-development, and this looks like a very exciting program that Brett has put together. And I certainly want to support the city of Middleton in its efforts. But I must say that as we were contemplating moving into the space and knowing that there would be development at some point in time in our future, that we were not contemplating a large-scale apartment complex to be our next door neighbors. We were thinking that it would be a large office building of the kind that are in and around the area. Not really, I don't have that many specific examples or items of concern, but I do want to bring up some thoughts of this. And by the way, Brett Newcomb and I had a chance to get together and talk about the project, and we had a wonderful meeting, and it is truly a really exciting development, and I do wish Brett great success with this, and I look forward to being a great neighbor to Brett and his development. But some of the concerns I have with a large apartment complex being right next to us is that we run a large clinical service center and a retail showroom at Care Direct, and we have patients coming and going from our facility. And generally speaking, these patients are elderly. They are, in need of their healthcare services, and coming to us in a business park environment is what they're used to and expecting. Having a large apartment complex next to us does introduce some other elements of the patient experience that we weren't anticipating. We also have employees that are on site from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, oftentimes on the weekends as well. But we also have, given the type of business we're in, that we have clinicians and patient support staff on call 24/7. So we do have activity on our property coming and going for a large portion of the week and through the weekend. And I guess I'm just not certain that this is an ideal environment where we have this kind of patient and employee traffic situated right next to 150 plus units. I am a bit concerned about the increased pedestrian and traffic that this project will create. and being a pedestrian friendly city, I suspect that we're going to have quite a bit of pedestrian traffic in and around our property. I do worry about trespassing, potential issues with pet waste on the property and on the terrace surrounding our property, the potential for noise pollution, litter, visual pollution, such as what's allowed on the balconies. And the way the property is drawn and situated, there's going to be a number of units that will be, directly facing our east side of the building. And we, as you know, the building that we occupy has windows all the way around the building. We have a large employee break and conference and cafeteria area where we'll be looking out directly at this apartment complex. And so I was worried about what might be allowed to be on the balconies. As crazy it sounds, people's laundries or bikes, or it's part of their storage unit. And Brett did a nice job explaining how that there's some possibilities or ways to minimize this, and I respect that. But again, I just want to go on record to express some concerns that putting an apartment complex right next to a busy clinical and patient service center is, we may have to work through some issues. I certainly am not putting my foot down and demanding any special consideration here, but and certainly don't want to stand in the way of Brett's project. I just want to advise the city that this is a new kind of concept, putting apartment complexes right next to other businesses, and that we hope that we'd be able to work together in the future should issues or circumstances arise where we need to get together and problem solve. That's it. Oh, Mr. Mayor, I believe you're muted.
Yes, Don, are you done?
Yes, I am done.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
Anybody else who might want to speak at this time, please raise your hands. Anybody else who may want to speak at this time, please raise your hand. I do not see any.
Commissioner Schaefer has his hand raised.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is we've been looking in the Parks Recreation Forestry Commission about the total lack of parks and playgrounds for people and children living west of the Beltline and that southwest quadrant, and we're still struggling with that. And this becomes one more potential building where there's not a single inch of land available to or designated to either park or playground land. And I think it's really important. We've often in the past looked at looking at fees to sort of buy that off, but there's no land to buy. And here would be again an example of apartments and more people coming in for where there's what appears to be zero land available to do a park, to do some open space, to do anything to sort of support the community. So that's I'm not necessarily against this in concept, although we also talk on the commission that we're 100% out of space for commercial and business stuff.
Right.
And here's some of this, but that's so coming at it from the park side of saying there's nothing in this proposal that says we're going to do anything except complicate the problem of parks in the southwest quadrant of the city. So
I'm 100% in agreement with the PRFC Chair John, and I think that is something which we will have to address, no question about it. Anyone else who wants to speak at this time? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing for a general implementation plan for the Newcomb residential development at 1312 John Q. Hammonds Drive. And the next item is the approval of the minutes. I need a motion to approve the Plan Commission minutes of April 27th, 2021.
So moved, Murray.
Schaefer seconds.
Okay, so the motion by Jennifer and second by Commissioner Schaefer. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. We are
Mayor
all
Berg.
Yep.
Before we get into the agenda items, I just wanted to note that Commissioner Bruce plans to abstain from items number 2 and 8 due to a potential perceived conflict of interest.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. That's great. Okay, so item number 1, and the Commissioner Randy Bruce is abstaining from this one. General Implementation Plan, GIP Newcomb Residential Development 1312 John Q. Hammond's Drive. And did you say there's going to be a little presentation, Abby, or is it you're going
Yes.
to? Okay,
Um,
let's go for it.
Brett Newcomb and also his architect Kirk Keller will be making a presentation, but before we go into the presentation, I just wanted to mention 2 things quickly. The first being that I got an email from Commissioner Bruce earlier asking about how we reviewed the requirements for a GIP submittal and making sure that all of the requirements that are spelled out in section 10.83 of the city code are being met with the submittal. And I have to admit that all along, I've really thought of this submittal as more of a GIP text amendment. And I probably could have made that a little bit more clear by titling the agenda Revision to General Implementation Plan. There already is a general implementation plan that's in place for this area. It's the original Greenway Center GIP. And we would be looking at a rezoning in order to add housing as a permitted use. So that's kind of the goal behind this change that's being requested, although the submittal is quite a bit more detailed in terms of the number of units and already having building elevations in place than you would normally see in a GIP text amendment. If the commission determined that this is not a typical text amendment, it would require a statement of rationale, a statement of social and economic impacts, a general utility plan, a general landscape plan, and an owners association or deed restriction information in the submittal. And those items weren't in the submittal. The other relevant items in 1083 were all satisfied. And, you know, in my opinion, like I said, this is a GIP text amendment. I think that was all I had on this item. And so I think we can let the developer make a presentation.
Okay, Brett, go ahead.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Mayor Brar. My name is Brett Newcomb, and sitting next to me is my wife, Rachel. Also joining is Kirk Keller from Plunkett Racich Architects. I would like to say that thank you, Don, for making your comments. We had a great meeting with Don last week, and we shared our vision for the site, and Don shared his concerns. I really firmly believe that Don is supporting our efforts, and I've made a personal commitment to Don that we are going to be good neighbors, and we're going to listen to his concerns, and we're going to do everything we can to work together on this particular vision that we have for this site. With that, we also appreciate John Schaefer's comments about the parks, and we can talk a little bit about that today. I can tell you that my wife Rachel is very in favor. It's just kind of working out how that can play out. So with that, Daphne, would it be okay if I took control so I can kind of point with my mouse while I'm talking?
I'm not sure if you can. If you have an annotate option, that could be something.
I don't know if I have an annotate. I can share screen. If you gave me control, I can share my screen.
Stop share and then you can share if that would be easier, Brett.
Yeah, okay.
I just gave you control.
You did, okay.
I don't know if you can go ahead and move things around.
Okay, it's not, okay, it is. Great, thank you. Okay, so just to give everybody a point of reference where we are, if you can see my mouse, I'm going to start where everybody is very familiar. This is Starbucks at Greenway Station and Greenway Boulevard. And then traveling south from Starbucks on John Q. Hammond's. Our site is the last site before you cross into the Madison, the city of Madison. Sprecker's Restaurant was just to the south of our site. Don's office, UW Health Care Direct, is immediately west here. So we have this incredible opportunity. This is a 4-acre site located in Middleton. We think it's probably one of the last remaining quality pieces of land available in Middleton to develop. And we had an original vision for this site. And the vision was this. We thought, and now this was before the pandemic, when office was still in vogue, we wanted to develop this very similar to the way the East Wash corridor is being developed. And what I mean by that is East Wash right now is and was kind of the trendy place to be. It had housing, it had office, it had entertainment, restaurants, everything. And we thought to ourselves, is it possible to take the East Wash concept and move it to the suburbs? Because what surrounds this site to our, behind us where Don is and to our south is a suburban business park. And the concept of the suburban business park was created in the 1980s. And this is right in the theme of the 1980s suburban business park with big grass lawns, tons of parking. If you look across the street, you see the Marriott parking. The parking, just to the north is, that's a parking over here where Terrence is building, or whoever owns it now. The ponds, I mean, it's just a sea of asphalt. So the vision that we had is, can we take the East Wash concept, which everybody loves, and move it out to the suburbs? And it's, as Don said, it's a new concept. And we would be the beta test, but I firmly believe it would work. So, about 1.5 years ago, we developed this concept and we presented this to the city. City loved it, where we were going to build over a 100,000 square foot office building right up on the street on John Q. Hammond's. And then behind it was going to be an apartment building. And the apartment was going to come later. So we're going to do the office, and then it was going to be followed by the apartment. Everybody loved the concept. Unfortunately, since the pandemic, the whole concept of office has fallen off to the wayside. Office no longer is in vogue, and we don't know when it's going to come back. I think it will. It may be 5 to 7 years. So we kind of switched gears and we said, okay, let's investigate the apartment concept. So that then became this, where the apartment would kind of go to the back, as you can see, and it's a C-shaped apartment where there is a courtyard covering the parking. So the parking access is kind of facing the hotel, the Marriott, and you enter underground. There's 150 parking stalls underneath this entire rectangle box, but the apartments live above it in a C shape. So this green roof, if you will, it's like a 1/2 acre over the parking structure, and it would be real grass. And the way it's designed is that you could walk off of this real grass right onto the land that's there now. So there would not be a transition of elevation. And the front portion where the office would be probably left as a green pad until market conditions dictated what would be built there. So we're showing townhomes now because townhomes are in demand as much as apartments are. But I firmly believe that this is probably going to remain a green pad until office comes back in vogue. And then at that time, we can build something similar to this concept at that time. And that's where it kind of falls into John's comment about the park. And my wife, Rachel, and I both agree that we think that a good use for this green pad until office comes back would be some kind of a park. And we feel that maybe it's a temporary park. It's a temporary use that is there for 3, 5, 7 years, whatever it might take for office to come back. And we'd be willing to work with the city on what that looks like and what's the best way to put that to use. Personally, I think that a good way to, because Sprecher's is no longer there, Sprecher's was a great place for the business people to go after work. We need that again. We need a place for just people to congregate and socialize, yet also a place that kids can enjoy being there. So I can see a conversation around that for that area until such time office comes back. If I could speak just briefly to Don's comments. So I took these pictures. The picture on the right, so the apartment building would be back here. And actually from the closest point of Don's office to where the apartment would be is over 100 feet. There's a 60-foot wide parking lot here. There's green space at his building. There's more green space at his property line. There's a pond. And then our building would be back. So the closest point is about 100 feet. Having said that, there's also these big trees. The picture on the left depicts these large trees that are kind of screening his building from the apartment that would be there. So I think, you know, in the vein of being a good neighbor, I think it's already established that we're going to be kind of separated and we're going to be kind of, you know, kind of protected from each other a little bit. The apartment concept that we're looking at right now is a 5-story, if you count the underground parking, and then 4 stories above. And we had market research done. The type of user that would live here would be higher end users. These are the Epic employees. These are the PPD employees. These are young single people making $80,000 to $100,000. Though that demographics, along with empty nesters, would be here. So it's going to attract a higher level of clientele. The quality of the construction and the style of construction lends itself really well to a sustainable design. So we're going to incorporate things like solar panels. We have the green roof that we just talked about. We want to have gas stoves and gas ovens, energy efficient building materials, LED lights. And then a big part of a sustainable design is just the location. So this is located kind of in between the retail area and then the Starbucks and then Capitol Brewery to the north, and then the business park to the south. So it just lends itself perfectly to the East Wash concept of this mixed use vision. And we think it's gonna be really attractive to users. As far as people trespassing over to the building, to Don's building, we feel that most of the foot traffic is going to be going this direction towards Starbucks or towards Capitol Brewery. We think that the traffic's going to be down John Q. Hammond's, not this direction. So we think it's going to be limited traffic and trespassing in that direction. So I think I've spent my 5 minutes here. I hope that you understand our vision. We think it's a quality vision. It's a new concept. And I really think it'll be a catalyst for redeveloping this particular corridor. And in the future, we're going to see less parking lots and more of a mixed use density kind of development between here and Starbucks. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions for Brad? Or yes, let's ask any questions for Brad.
Abby, I was just going to ask if I could take 1 minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just a tag on. My name is Kirk Keller. I'm the architect for the project, and okay. I've been involved in many construction projects in the city of Middleton. Glad to be returning to this site. It's a site I've looked at for years and thought about development on it. Brett's closing comment, and I just want to build on a couple points of that is what's being started here is a corridor of development. And Brett, if you could switch to the exterior 3D view of the building. One of the things we're doing, you see, we're looking up Holiday from east to west here. You're seeing the green pad, it's not developed, we're early here. And what we're doing is you're not seeing the parking at all, because as Brett explained, the parking is tucked into the hillside that's naturally formed by the topography going uphill towards Deming. And so we're veneering the first floor with apartment units. So there is an entry point on the far left of this image, but it screens, and Brett, if you could we'll just quickly go through the next two pictures. Keep going, yeah, this is the parking inside the building. You're seeing some small apartments off to the top and to the right, but this is the 150 parking stalls. This is what's resulting in the density of getting a green roof onto this property, of forming the C-shaped building over this 20,000 square feet of green roof above it. And then the last image, Brett, if you could kindly switch to that, you're seeing an uncolorized version of inside this C of how people would access the green roof. And we would program it, heavily programmed for exterior uses by small groups. So it's kind of a complete thought. We're working on we'll call it an internal street design with wherever comes out to the property along John Q. Hammond's. That's an ongoing proposition, and we look forward to moving forward into full GIP and SIP review. Thanks.
Thank you, Kurt. So, Brett, I want to say I appreciate your comments that you're going to be thinking about having a park there, because you got 152 apartments and potential 19 or 20 townhomes. So even though there will be younger folks or empty nesters, there will be children. So, and this southwest quadrant, as John said, has nothing. It has no park, no playground, absolutely nothing. So we just had a Market West development, and the Market West paid $800,000 in park fees and lieu. And you know what they got from the city? Nothing. So this has to stop. And we don't want that the city get either the fees and lieu or the park development fee and does nothing for those people who are going to be living in those apartments and nothing for the developer. If city is going to do that, maybe the developer shouldn't pay any of that. So, but I think, or it should be put in the escrow account. So, but I'm glad that you're doing something, because we need some sort of park in that area very badly. And I don't think city should be taking money from one part of the city and using somewhere else and giving nothing to that part of the city for years. In this case for 22 years, we have had over 600 apartments minimum in those, they were called Galena apartments, and no park, period. No playgrounds, nothing, absolutely nothing. And this is really unacceptable, because where do those kids go? I mean, in early years, the kids play in the playground, they make friendships, and they also learn so many other things, how to, handle things in life. And also the parents get together, they make friendships too. So it's just playground it helps build the community. And we are all very passionate about it, and I agree with John, and work with the city staff. We will have to have something for these 152 apartments and 19 townhomes there. They deserve it. And you shouldn't have to pay money, but city takes it from there and uses wherever they want. That's just not acceptable. Any other questions or comments? So you have to work with the city staff and resolve this, because this is not going to be acceptable, that city takes your money and runs with it. It's like Peter robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's just not acceptable at all. Please raise your hands if you would like to.
Commissioner
Randy,
Paulson
Bruce, and then Kurt Paulson, or I don't know what the order was. So
Randy was first.
okay,
first.
Randy and then Kurt.
Thank you. Abby, thanks for the explanation as to why this submittal fits within the ordinance requirements. I didn't really look at it that way. I didn't understand that we were really looking at this as an amendment to an existing GIP. I'm very supportive of housing at this location. I think this is exactly where we want to start adding more housing units, close to employment, close to retail. I think it makes the whole Greenway development stronger. I think we've seen some benefits from the added housing already that's there. And as Brett said, I think this goes a long way towards creating something that's, an exciting place to live and shop and work. So I think it's very good. Mayor, I agree with you that we've got to find a solution for the for parks in this quadrant of the city, but I wouldn't want that to delay additional development. I think the additional housing is very necessary for the city, and I think we could look at trying to find solutions to the park issue as we move forward. That's it.
Thank you, Randy. Kurt?
Yeah, so if whoever's driving the bus here could pull up the site plan. I just want to make sure I'm understanding something. Engineering staff comments said, yeah, there you go. Only one driveway off an arterial, so that would be John Q. Hammond's. As I understand it, the current driveway on the northeast corner of your parcel, move up on the cursor. Yeah, the current driveway is going to be eliminated. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Brett, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, when you say the current driveway, you mean the other driveway on John Q. Hammond's as to the north?
Right. There's currently two on John Q. Hammond's, right?
That would be eliminated, right on the corner. That would be eliminated, yes.
Good. That's so that engineering staff comment has already been addressed. So yeah, so I want to echo Randy's comments about both the design of the building and how the concept interacts with the rooftop green space. I think that's good, and I'm gonna vote to support this. I guess for Abby, in terms of the GIP amendment, what did we approve in the office building about a year or two ago? Was that an SIP?
Yes, the city
Okay.
did approve an SIP for the office building, and the city also provided concept approval for the overall mixed use development. But at that time, Brett did not plan to move forward immediately for the housing component, so we didn't do a GIP amendment at that time.
So the SIP really covers the eastern parcel, and is it two parcels?
It's actually one
parcel.
One parcel, yeah.
That's good, because we have that requirement that you have to record an SIP within 5 years of a GIP. So there's a recorded SIP on the parcel right now. So yeah, I agree with you that this would just be a GIP amendment. And it would include the text and the map, because it would be specific uses and density and the height, which is what we define in 10.83. Is that the right statute? Yes. So those are mostly the questions I had.
Okay.
I guess the only other question is, do we need to see a landscaping plan? Because if we see a landscaping plan that would be at the SIP stage.
That's correct. Yeah, they're showing some minimal landscaping on their property in addition to the terrace trees, but it's I wouldn't call it a general landscape treatment plan. That would be at the SIP.
Right. But the general landscape treatment plan is usually at 10.83 sub 4 is in the GIP. That's
correct. And the original GIP for the Greenway Center development did have a general landscaping plan. So that's why I was kind of looking at this as more of like a text amendment to add housing as a permitted use to this property, but at a max number of units of, I think it was 171 is how we noticed the public hearing.
Right. And I agree with that. And just for Brett's benefit, when you come at the SIP, one of the ways to alleviate the concern with the UW Health is perhaps a more robust landscape treatment on the west side of the parcel.
But we completely understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Please raise your hand. I don't see any. So I agree with Randy that with all the comments he made, but the park is something which we cannot just, I know we got to go with this development, but people in that quadrant have waited for 22 years. And I think if we don't do anything now, they're going to be waiting another 20 years because this is how the city operates. Unless you ask for it, it does not happen. Or if we are not going to do anything, Brett shouldn't have to pay any of those fees. I mean, if he's not, he or his occupants are not getting anything, why should he be paying that? Or if he pays, that should go in escrow account rather than being used somewhere else. Okay, so I need a motion to approve.
It would make a.
Well, John
Oh,
Schaefer.
sorry, John Schaefer.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. John, go
Sorry,
ahead.
just a simple comment going back on the parks. I think I appreciate, Brett, that you're willing to look and think about this thing. And I think it's critical partly because you're an isolated unit. There's no other housing right there. And so you have a unit that you're close to businesses, close to offices, close to retail. But this is an isolated little cloud. And what we've garnered in this part of the city is a bunch of isolated little clouds. So I just appreciate your willingness and look forward to anything you can do to say some kind of a little park and function to give some green space, play space for kids is critical from my perspective on moving forward. I think the idea is a great idea. I just want to push that in.
Yeah, John, we hear what you're saying, and we already have a pretty good dialogue with Abby about this and some creative concepts kind of starting to brew.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to continuing those conversations.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I make a motion to approve contingent on the approval of TIA and approval of the stormwater management plan. And I would want to add that addressing the park issues. Need a second.
How would you, what do you mean by address the park issues in the motion to recommend to council to approve the GIP?
Okay, where would that be addressed? How should it be addressed?
I think it's best if the minutes reflect the mayor's concern about, and John Schaefer's concerns about park fees. But that doesn't seem to be a contingency of our recommending approval at this stage.
Okay, all right, I will do just that, contingent on those two requirements, the TIA and stormwater management plan. But I absolutely am determined that this has to be addressed, period.
Can I just say one thing really quick? Again, I can't raise my hand on here, so I'm not trying to interrupt people, but because I have the meeting, I can't raise my hand. I just wanted to mention one thing, and that is that the Parks Board is taking a look at finding parkland in the southwest quadrant of the city. They've already identified several sites. And my understanding, and I'm trying to pull up their minutes here, and I don't see them on our website, but my understanding is that Brett's property is not one of the leading properties that has been identified by the Parks Board. They're taking a look at 2 or 3 other properties, and I believe our public lands director is pursuing those and working with the property owners on that right now. And I also just wanted to say that while I wholeheartedly support the need for a park in the southwest quadrant of the city, I do not think that it is fair to say that developers have paid fees and have gotten nothing in return. We have many community parks in the city that have a broader service area than just, half a mile. I know Lakeview Park's service area is 3 miles, and it certainly is an amenity for people who live on the southwest side of the city, even though they may have to drive in order to access it.
Yeah.
Thank
Mayor,
you, Abby.
I will second your motion.
Okay, Abby, yes, I know that PRFC is looking for sites and there's no land available there. There are couple of slivers which they are trying to put a playground, but that's not really the solution. So, and yeah, we're not going to go into a debate whether or not that those people at Market West got what they paid, $800,000 and the fees paid earlier. But yes, they got, they didn't get what they should have. So anyway, any further questions or comments on this one?
Commissioner
Okay.
Schaefer has his hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to say that the parks is looking at those spots, but we're looking at land that we already own, that we're constrained by what we have because we can't buy private land for private developers. So this spot really didn't come up on the radar because it's privately held land and it wasn't really an availability. And even by the zoning, it wasn't zoned for that anyway. So it's not like we're not looking and we ignored this site or thought it wasn't a relevant site. It's that this is a private land, private site, and we're looking to rezone it. And so we are still looking. What we have are a paucity of options at the moment. So we're really open to anything and everything.
And
Any
just
other questions or comments?
well, to tag onto that, Mayor, what we talked about, just so everybody's on the same page here. So this green pad, if you will, is going to remain green until the market dictates what the best use is for this pad. That could be an office building, or it could be townhomes. Until that happens, in our conversation with Abby, we suggested maybe this is used as a park in the near future, temporarily, until the city does find its home for a long-term park. So we would not be interested in dedicating this land for a full-time park. It would be used temporarily while this is a green pad.
Okay, let's talk about it. So any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the GIP for Newcomb Residential Development 1312 John Key Humans Drive, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And I know Randy Bruce is abstaining. I know we are beyond 7:30. We're going to skip
Mayor?
the item.
Excuse me, Mayor. I'm not abstaining from this, the Newcomb proposal. I'm abstaining from the next one.
Oh, okay, all right. So we are going to skip, well, we have to, because we have, Abby, should we go through, or that part, one of the items is at 7:30, right?
I believe that items 2, 3, and 4 will be pretty quick. They're just scheduling hearings, and we do have
Okay.
some folks on the line waiting for those items.
Okay, all right. Okay, so item number 2 is scheduled public hearing for rezoning from B2 to PDD GIP Prime Urban Properties Mixed Use Building 6230 University Avenue. So.
Mayor, I move to schedule a public hearing for June 8th at 7 p.m., subject to a class 2 notice.
Okay, I second it.
Schaefer seconds.
Okay, Schaefer seconds it. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to schedule the public hearing for rezoning from B2 to PDD GIP Prime Urban Properties Mixed Use Building 6230 University Avenue, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And Randy Bruce is abstaining from this one. Okay, so the next one is item number 3, schedule public hearing for rezoning from B2 to PDD GIP, the Conservancy 2644 Branch Street.
Mayor, I move to schedule a public hearing for June 8th, 2021 at 7:15, subject to a class 2 notice.
Okay, okay, I will
Schaefer
go.
seconds.
Okay, Schaefer seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to schedule public hearing for rezoning from B2 to PDD GIP, the Conservancy at 2644 Branch Street, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. And the next one is again, item number 4, schedule a public hearing for rezoning from B3 to PDD GIP Bruce Company redevelopment, multiple parcels on Parmenter Street, Donna Drive, and Laura Lane.
Mayor?
Mhm.
Just really quickly, we received a comment from Commissioner Bruce that there are not firm upper limits identified in this GIP on unit counts, building sizes, and parking counts. We will need those in order to write the public hearing notice, and that number cannot be flexible once we have those upper limits. So I will work with the applicant on getting those before we draft and send out the public hearing notice later this week. I also just wanted to clarify that in the packet, there's a vision presented for this project overall, and it goes beyond parcels that are under control by the developer, but the parcels that are included in the rezoning application and that are identified in Appendix A don't include properties that are beyond the control of the developer.
So you would say motion to defer then?
No, I think
No.
it can go forward. I think it's good. I just wanted to just point that out in case there was any confusion about properties that were not under control or ownership of the developer. Those are not included in the rezoning.
Okay. All right,
And
go ahead.
Abby, can I follow it with an even more technical question? Will the public hearing notice list the unit caps for each building or an overall cap on the number of units on the parcel, because there is a little chart on one of the pages that shows a unit count. But the text on that implies flexibility of unit count in each building. And the question is whether the public hearing needs to specify the unit count in each building or a total unit cap for the property.
I would recommend the latter, a total unit cap for the property, all of the properties, but I guess I would have to defer to our zoning administrator.
Mark,
I'd be okay with the property as well. I think that makes sense, as long as it's well-defined. As Abby noted, it doesn't affect everything that's shown in only the properties that are under their control. It would only affect those parcels. And if they want to redistribute where the density is within that area, I think that's acceptable.
any other questions or comments for, okay, Randy?
This is a question for Abby and Mark. Do we need, in addition to caps, maximum numbers, do we need minimums as well?
That's a good question. I would think that for parking, you might want to include a minimum. The only reason to include a minimum on that I can think of on unit counts and building sizes would be related to the economic investment that's being contemplated for the project. And I know that there will be a TIF request associated with this project. I mean, obviously, if the city does decide to move forward with the TIF agreement and the valuations come in lower, that would be at the risk of the developer, not at the risk of the city, because these are developer finance TIFs. I would defer to the commission whether you would want to set minimums in addition to maximums.
Any comments from the commissioners? Kurt?
Yeah, so on page 30 of the application, I don't know what page that is in the packet. There's a table there that says building data. And that includes the number of stories, square footage of the building, the number of units, and then a count of the number of stalls and a number of presumably beds in the hotel. And as I understand it, the public hearing notice would list, in this case, up to 800 multifamily units, 500 hotel bedrooms, and 890 stalls. And so that would become a cap on the maximum number of units, but would also seem to imply a requirement for that number of parking stalls to be provided. Because everything, units and height is a maximum in our ordinances, but parking is a minimum. So I would not feel the need to talk about minimum height or minimum units. But, and do we usually do minimum number of parking stalls at the GIP or at the SIP stage, if we do it at each building? Mark or Abby?
If it's a GIP that covers multiple buildings and multiple properties, we usually do define that in the SIP stage.
So that can be a part of the GIP, is to say that parking will be determined building by building at the SIP stage?
Yes, but by putting an overall cap, if that's the direction that you want to go, we would then not allow the amount of parking provided to go above that cap. And you're correct that right now our zoning ordinance does define parking minimums and not maximums, but we are, of course, undertaking a zoning code rewrite, and I would expect that could change. It was identified in the comprehensive plan. So I would think it would be wholly appropriate for the commission to set a maximum on the parking.
Well, the only question before us is whether the parking needs to be listed in the public hearing notice.
At all. Yeah, I understand.
And I don't think it does, but
Mhm.
it's part of the application that we are considering a public hearing on.
Right. Yeah, the Newcomb project, the public hearing notice for that project did not list the number of parking stalls. And I think many of our recent examples, we didn't list parking stalls in the public hearing notice, just the number of units.
I agree.
But anyone wanting to testify at the public hearing would see this GIP application because the data is in there. Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, need a
Then Mayor,
motion.
I would make a motion to schedule the public hearing for June 8th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. subject to a class 2 notice.
Okay, need a second.
Second,
Second, that's Randy?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion to schedule the public hearing for rezoning from B3 to PDD GIP, Bruce Company redevelopment, multiple parcels on Parmenter Street, Donna Drive and Laurel Lane, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. So Abby, do you want to, we gave the time of 7:30 for the presentation, so I think we should go there. Okay, we are going to go to item number 7. This is the zoning ordinance rewrite project presentation by RFP respondents, finalists, discussion and recommendation to Common Council. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As requested at the last meeting, we invited all 3 finalists, HKGI, Vandal and Associates, and ZoneCo in partnership with Urban Assets to give you presentations at this meeting tonight. We asked them to limit their presentations to 10 minutes and with a question and answer period afterwards, which we propose 10 minutes, but that's up to you. I just think you need to make sure you're consistent with each of the presenters. And we used a random number generator to select the order of the presentations. It happens to be in alphabetical order. So HKGI will be first, followed by Vandal, followed by ZoneCo. So I will turn it over. I'm sorry.
So Mark, then the questions will be at the end of the all
Right.
3 presentations, right?
No, after each presentation is what we
After each
envisioned.
presentation, okay,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
all right.
So who from HKGI, I can't see everyone on my screen.
Mark, Jeff, and I are here. This is
Okay.
Rita Trapp from HKGI, and Jeff
Wonderful.
has some slides to share.
Wonderful, welcome. Sorry to keep you
Thank you.
waiting a few minutes.
That's okay.
So we have Rita and, I'm sorry, Jeff is there, and Eric, you said too?
No, just Jeff and myself.
Okay,
So,
you.
and we were able to share the slides. That's great. And so I'll get started. Thank
Right,
you,
thank you.
everybody. We appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and have a conversation about your upcoming zoning ordinance rewrite project. As I said, my name is Rita Trapp. I'm with Hoisington Kogler Group, and we are a planning, landscape architecture, and urban design firm. We are based in Minnesota, and we have been around for more than 35 years. Jeff? Okay.
Sorry.
I couldn't tell. No, that's okay. I was thinking, and I mean, you know, it just wasn't responding to you. That happens sometimes. So we serve communities in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota, and Michigan. So very much focused in the upper Midwest. We have staff that are located in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And we have done some projects in Wisconsin, including a zoning code rewrite for the city of Onalaska and some zoning work for the city of Greenville. And our overall goal is to help communities create places that enrich people's lives. So even though I know that we had a little bit of time to listen to your work, it's always fascinating to hear what's happening in communities. And so when we talk about what we do, we are really focused on landscape architecture and zoning and planning. So you can see we do comprehensive plans and neighborhood plans. So the foundation that you've already done. and then use those to create zoning codes and design guidelines. We also think our planning services and legal expertise, testimony and research is really helpful for us because we are implementers of code as we serve as planners in individual cities. So we know what it's like to try and implement the codes that we've written or been involved with interpreting other folks' codes. And then on the bottom, you can see a variety of other types of work that we do. And all of these help inform the planning and zoning work we do. So for example, when you do landscape architecture work, we have staff that build and implement construction projects. And that really helps us and have resources in-house when we're talking about updating landscaping codes. We have staff that know that area well. We also have done targeted zoning updates. So instead of doing an entire rewrite, we have communities we've worked with on particular topics. And that means our opportunity to do a real deep dive in a lot of different topics, many of which are relevant to some of the topics that you're interested in. So for example, short-term rental housing, accessory dwelling units. On the right, you can see an example of some of the graphics we created to try and illustrate or communicate to property owners about what they could do and how it works in different situations. So we really have a lot of targeted experience. The project team members, we have 5 in the proposal, and you are seeing myself and Jeff Miller tonight, and that's because Jeff and I have really been the leaders in the firm for creating zoning ordinances and working with communities. Jeff is the project manager. I will be the lead planner. He and I often trade off on communities on doing that type of work. Also joining us is Trey, who is a new hire for us, and he brings planning experience and working in communities. Jody Rader is our Wisconsin landscape architect, and so she really brings a lot of pedestrian and walkability and bikeability and transit planning in the Twin Cities area. So we bring those as resources. And then Brad Shive has been with us for a number of years in the firm and really provides that expertise on a variety of areas, and again, also provides planning services in the community. I know we wanted to give a brief overview, but Jeff is really going to dive into specifics about your proposal and our understanding and how we feel like we can meet your needs for this project.
Great, thanks, Rita. I'll try to go through these slides so we can stick to the time limit as best as possible. So first is understanding of the zoning update priorities that you have. Based on looking at the RFP and looking at your recently updated and adopted comp plan, my understanding is it's to implement the comp plan, context-sensitive zoning, housing, form-based, mixed-use development. It doesn't look like you have mixed-use districts unless I missed that on the zoning map. Environmental sustainability, and then just having a modern user-friendly code and format. So just briefly on each of those topics, context-sensitive design is understanding you want to work with the neighborhoods, corridors, and districts identified in the city, as well as open space conservancy. We do a lot of that kind of work. You can see some examples of how we've studied building heights and their impacts on adjacent open spaces or lower density neighborhoods. Increased housing options. We've been doing a lot of that work, especially the last few years. We've done a couple housing studies. We know that you're interested in expanding housing types that are allowed in the districts, including the topic of missing middle housing. We've been working with that a lot. Accessory dwelling units, we've worked at that with a few cities recently as well. Affordable housing, of course, and then just really working with residential density standards, including lot sizes and building heights. We're working with that a lot as well. Another topic that we're very familiar with is form-based mixed-use development. The way we do it is we would go in and evaluate the existing districts to figure out how they're working or not working, if they can be updated or if they should be replaced or consolidated or whatever's appropriate. We look at creating new districts that are more form-based, based on scale, building form, and then mix of uses as well, but secondarily. Establishing form-based design elements in those districts, incorporating transit, if that's the case, which we know BRT is something that's a possibility in Middleton, and then walking and biking needs. And we know that you're interested in updating parking standards. Rita mentioned that we recently worked in Alaska. We did completely review and update their parking standards as an example. Environmental sustainability. Again, our understanding is you're looking at your floodplain district, impervious surface coverage, green infrastructure, community gardening, recycling, composting, bird-friendly building design, a wide variety of things. And we feel like we're very equipped to take that on with you. And then lastly is getting to a user-friendly code format. We have looked at your zoning ordinance, and like we've seen in several communities, the ordinances seem to lag behind the rest of the city's plans, studies. And I had questions for Mark early on and mentioned I was kind of surprised to see what the ordinance looked like compared to, the reputation of Middleton and seeing your comp plan and other things that you're doing, the development types. And so it's obviously due for an update. What we usually do is we really look at all the districts together, put them into a table so that we can make all the standards, uses concise, easy to find in a table. It also makes it easier to evaluate across districts. Are there just lots of extra uses or redundant uses or conflicting uses? And so we use the table as a tool to get to an organized code, but it's also an end result as well. So lastly, I'll go over our approach, and these icons move around a little bit. So what we're talking about is a 5-phase approach, which is in our proposal: initiate and shape the project, do the diagnosis of both the code and the zoning map, which gets at all the districts and how they work or don't work, create an outline or new organization for the code, and then prepare the draft of it and get to the final version that can be adopted by the city. I'll talk really briefly about the highlights of that process. One thing that we have found very valuable is to go in and really map the various categories of uses. So just the residential districts, just the commercial districts, as an example, and really just see how they're being applied. Sometimes we found some districts are not applied on the map at all, or 1 or 2 properties. So there's obviously not a great need for it. And sometimes you can identify where things can be consolidated that way as well. So we found that to be very helpful. The tables are really helpful. We just had a conversation with Alaska staff, and she was very positive about how easy the tables have been for them to use and for developers and property owners to use in their code. We'll go in and identify inconsistencies between the districts, between the sections of the zoning code, and then with the map as well. And it's our understanding that the PDDs need to be looked at, that there's a lot of PDDs that are being used because possibly the zoning code's not working as well as it could. So we understand that that's an interest. And then as far as the way we break down updating the whole code and rewriting the whole code, we'll do it in 4 modules. So when we get to writing the draft, we'll first do just the base districts and those uses and standards. Then we'll look at any new districts, mixed use districts, overlay districts, the floodplain district. Then we'll go into general development standards, including parking and sustainability and landscaping and lighting and all that sort of stuff. And then lastly, the development procedures. So the variance process versus CUPs and that sort of thing. Public outreach, it's our understanding that what you're looking for is for HKGI, if we're lucky to be hired, we develop a public outreach strategy with staff to achieve an effective amount of community input for the project. And we'd see that as a mix of online and hopefully in-person activities during the timeline of this project, maintain the project website with updates, really target key stakeholders for zoning. We know that the regular public does not come out in droves for zoning easily. So it's really good to focus on stakeholders.
If
then
you
the
could wrap up in the
other
next
bodies.
minute, that would be, if you could wrap
Yep.
up in the next minute, we would appreciate that. Thank you.
This is the
Sorry to
last slide. So this is our schedule. And I think the RFP looked at the end of the year, or if it needed to be longer than that, we're proposing that it be about a year long, or a little bit less than a year, out into April. And that's it. Thanks for the opportunity to interview.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate that. Okay, questions for Jeff or Rita?
So Aaron?
Okay, go ahead, Kurt.
I didn't know if anyone else had their hand raised. I'll ask the same question of all applicants just to make it fair. Jeff and Rita, as you know, our comprehensive plan looks at established neighborhoods and envisions kind of what we might call incremental density or missing middle for perhaps townhouses by conditional use, 2 to 3 units. Can you give an example of a zoning ordinance where you've been successful in kind of updating the zoning ordinance to allow a slightly more variety of housing type in established neighborhoods?
Yeah, I could take that. So it's a much smaller city, but we last year finished updating the zoning code in Grand Marais, Minnesota, up on the North Shore. And they actually decided to go to one district, residential district. Again, they're a small town, so I won't spend too much time on it. But they made some major moves to reduce barriers to getting more types of housing and affordable housing. And so for them, that was reducing the lot size from a minimum of 10,000 to 5,000 square feet. We looked at lot widths, lot depths, lot coverage, and they reduced those as well. And we added and defined housing types, including the missing middle housing types, courtyard cottages, if you've heard of those, townhouses. We even really tried to make manufactured housing and tiny houses possible in the city. They were open to that sort of thing. So that's the best example. We are working in Roseville, Minnesota right now. And I think Mark has looked at that project a little bit, but we are in the process of recommending that their lowest district allow not just single family houses. And we're optimistic that that's going to happen.
Any other questions? I don't see raised hands. Please raise your hand. This could be also the city council people as well as Jen Murray, and also the zoning committee.
Yeah,
Jen,
so
go ahead.
my question is about the PDD issues that Middleton's been facing. You had mentioned that one thing you'll look at are codes district by district. In an area where we have like urban mixed use, what would be your approach to looking at the PDD issues in Middleton?
I can try to take that and Rita can chime in. I think what we usually try to do is, we're assuming that you would rather not do PDDs if you didn't have to. I don't know that that's true, of course, but we would try to create new districts that are flexible enough that allow mixed use, not require too many things, so that they would work for developers to actually use the districts. We are aware of cities and have worked with cities that have mixed use districts that have everything they want, but then the district becomes a barrier to actually getting development because they're too prescriptive. So I think our goal would be to come in and make the mixed use districts flexible enough that they could be worked with and you wouldn't have to go bypass it with a PDD. I don't know if you have more to add to that or not, Rita.
I have a little bit to add in terms of process. What we've used, because this is actually a topic that has occurred in most of the zoning code rewrites we've worked on in some form, is to obviously begin by working with staff to better understand what's working and not working. And we've really had to tailor kind of an individual approach to each community in terms of figuring out what the best options are. So in some communities, we've created like a fixed district where the PDDs that exist live, and then if redevelopment was going to occur at that time, it would get upgraded into a regular zoning district. Some communities have wanted to be proactive, so once we have things in place, then we've started to work through rezoning to the new district, and that's where we have to have kind of an individual approach with communities to understand what have been the challenges, how do we create a district that's going to work, and then what process can we be using in order to make that transition. And it's fairly individual, though we have certainly learned lessons that help us ask better questions and help suggest approaches that staff has really helped shape what they think would be the best fit for their particular community.
Thank you.
Anyone else, either from the commission or from the city council? Anyone else? Okay. I don't see any raised hand. I have a question that what do you think is the single most important thing in this zoning rewrite, and how would you achieve it?
Wow, that's a big question. Let's see. I think what we found is really making the districts work. So really working on getting them all in the same spot, which is the table that I mentioned before, and really analyzing across the districts how they relate to each other and where there's inconsistencies. And if they work, I think the code works a lot better. And just having that visibility that developers and property owners can see the districts and understand them rather than having to page through a very long zoning code to understand this is in this district, but then I have to go and look at other things, other places, and I can't see everything. I don't know if Rita, if you have a big thing you want to add.
I think my big thing is more about process and making sure that we have found that oftentimes we start this project and there is a list of 80 or more different things that need to be tackled. But as we work through with staff and with elected and appointed officials, we can really group them and narrow it down, and then we're able to address those most important things. So for me, the most important thing to do is to use a process that's going to be able to understand at the beginning what those important elements are, and then to really focus in on those and making those changes, because they're going to have the most benefit for everybody, applicants as well as appointed and elected officials and staff. And so that's one thing that's been really an interesting process, is really every community is very different about what's the most important elements. And so our process has really worked to flesh those out so that when we get to the end, at least our experience has been of the recent projects, there's a lot of community support and buy-in from the planning commission or the plan commission, depending on what state you're in, and the city council. And so that to me is a really important element, is being responsive to what the needs are.
Thank you, Rita. John Schaefer. John Schaefer.
Sorry, I was muted. I appreciate where you're talking about trying to be flexible. I wonder to what extent you take into account the notion of neighborhood. For example, I live right in the downtown in a historic house in a historic neighborhood. It used to be called a blighted neighborhood. And yet there's one set of sort of zoning rules that fit my house. And when the city wanted to come in and plow out 6-foot, snow removal things, because it was like a suburban area and it didn't fit our area at all. To what extent do you take these issues into account in looking at neighborhoods as it's just opposed to classes? It's one thing to say this is a residential single family home. It's another thing to say this was built in 1880 and this other one was built in, or 1980, and this one was built in 1895.
Yeah, wow, another big question. I think I'll answer that with an example. Rita and I worked with the city of Golden Valley in the Twin Cities, and it was to look at lot splits. And they had neighborhoods that had lots that could be split. it's been in the code for a long time, but they were built and there was a certain character to the neighborhood. And as you can imagine, if somebody wanted to sell their house and they had a big enough lot that could be 2 or 3 lots, the neighbors maybe weren't gonna like that.
Been
And
there
so-
done it a couple
and
times.
So that topic brought out people to meetings, which is good. So we got tons of input on it. And I think where we landed, was the minimum lot size had some flexibility to it in that it incorporated a certain area around you and what was the lot size around you, not just what is the minimum lot size of that district,
Yeah.
which is much larger. And so in a sense, there was more than one minimum lot size based on the neighboring lots.
Okay. That makes a
Here,
lot of
that's, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to point out that's been about 11 or 12 minutes. If you, I just wanted to
Okay.
make the mayor aware of that.
Okay, all right. So unless I don't see any raised hands, so I think we're going to have to move on to the next presenter. So
Rita and
that's
Jeff,
Vandal.
thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
Vandal.
Thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
your time and the opportunity.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff,
you.
and thank you, Rita. I appreciate that. Okay,
So next we have Vandal and Associates. As you can see on your screen, they have their presentation ready to go. And I assume, Mary, we can turn it over to them.
okay, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. I'm Mike Slavny, and I've been a principal with Vandal and Associates since 1990, focusing on writing comprehensive plans and the zoning ordinances that implement them. Thank you very much for considering us on this very important project. I want to emphasize that beyond our ongoing service to the city for more than 40 years, we have a team with unparalleled zoning experience in Wisconsin and robust zoning experience nationwide. And those include award-winning zoning ordinances in North Carolina, Tennessee, Illinois, and 3 in Wisconsin. On this project, I will be joined by 3 of our experienced associate planners, 2 of whom, Ben Rohr and Jackie Mish, have each led 3 full zoning rewrites in the last few years. They will detail our proposal and qualifications to you, and Lupita Alvarez will present additional information about our experience right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. So I'll just share a little bit about Vandal and Associates. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a multidisciplinary firm with experience that spans from zoning and comprehensive planning to urban design and economic development. We've completed zoning work and redevelopment work nationally, but we've really been more focused in the Midwest recently with offices located in Madison, Milwaukee, and Columbus, Ohio. Next slide, please. So at Vandal, we bring significant experience working on zoning code rewrites, as Mike mentioned, and we are very familiar with the state of Wisconsin and its legal requirements. Our process is always an inclusive and transparent process. That way we can ensure that the project has full community support at the time of adoption. We have a longstanding relationship with Middleton, where we've been working alongside city staff for over 30 years. And our primary focus has really been on establishing the TIF district and attracting investment to the district. And because we know the community so well, we're ready to hit the ground running with this project and really finish it under an efficient timeline. Next slide, please. And we bring a multidisciplinary team to the project, with each one of us playing a unique role, and we all bring a different set of expertise to the project. I'll be more focused on the public engagement components and assist with any Spanish translation for the engagement as needed. Ben, who you will hear from soon, he is going to be the project manager. As Mike mentioned, he's been leading many of our zoning code rewrites along Jackie's side for the past 3 years. So they bring a lot of experience to the project. And Mike, with his national experience, he'll be the principal in charge. So now I'll hand it over to Jackie, who will serve as the project associate, and she'll share a little bit more about our project approach.
Thank you very much. So what sets Vandal and Associates apart? Well, first of all, our strong national experience. Mike Slavny has worked on zoning ordinances in more than 31 states. Our team also has extensive zoning experience in the state of Wisconsin. Over 40 communities in Wisconsin and 12 in Dane County have Vandal and Associates codes. And Mike is also the chair of Madison's zoning ordinance rewrite a few years back. We're also very up to date on the latest state and federal legislation and case law that impacts how communities could regulate zoning and sign regulations. So of the 3 firms that you're considering tonight, we have the most Wisconsin-specific expertise. Specifically, we'll make sure that Middleton's zoning code reflects changes to Chapter 66 pertaining to downzoning and having a supermajority vote, recent changes to Chapter 62 related to conditional use permits, Reed v. Gilbert, which affects how all communities regulate signs, and then a number of other recent cases. Finally, we, as a local firm, we will be available to you throughout the project, of course, but even after adoption. So we offer all of our clients services such as assisting with questions, zoning interpretations, perhaps the occasional amendment long after the code is adopted, and we're here to help answer those questions. So how will we meet Middleton's objectives? Well, first of all, we understand the relationship between zoning and many other important community objectives, such as planning, land division, economic development, and many more. We understand how to use zoning to implement comprehensive plans and community plans, and specifically can help use the future land use map as required by state statutes. We'll also design a code that's designed to protect and enhance community character, so specific neighborhoods, specific characteristics, yet provide flexibility when a good idea or an innovative idea comes along that doesn't necessarily fit with the zoning requirements that we have. The code will also protect natural resources and include components that support sustainable development. And will also include context-sensitive design standards that reflect development in the surrounding area. We also have a very practical approach to non-conforming situations. This is something lots of folks are concerned about when we first adopt a new zoning code. So we're making new rules. How do we make sure, how does that affect existing development that might not follow those rules right now? And so our approach is to make sure that our new code is providing solutions to that rather than creating problems for existing development. So what is our approach? In all of our zoning ordinances that we do, we begin with very thorough research upfront, information gathering, and plan review. Specifically, we review all the plan developments that you have on file, all the variances that you had, and we understand what types of projects might be important to you. We also have a pretty strong head start on understanding what Middleton is. But that said, we'll really want to leverage the really essential knowledge of city staff and the working group throughout the process, because we do know Middleton very well, but you guys will always know it a little bit better. We'll also utilize multiple different public engagement strategies, and Ben will tell us a bit more about that later in the presentation. We'll be sure to provide a zoning ordinance, a zoning map, and zoning districts that are completely customized to fit Middleton. So it won't be a code off the shelf. It'll be something completely designed for the development you have here in Middleton. We'll also use our deep experience to identify key policy questions at the beginning of the process, and then tackle those key policy decisions throughout the process. And then finally, we help assist with what we think is oftentimes the most challenging part of the process, which is adoption. So getting to the first draft is certainly intensive, labor intensive, and a lot of hard work. But once we start the adoption process, that's when people really start paying attention. And so that can become a challenging process. And so we'll be here physically and emotionally to help you through that sometimes challenging process. So I will turn it over to Ben now.
Thank you, Jackie. As it was mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about virtual meeting tools. Overall, prior to the pandemic, we were utilizing many of these features and formats already, but that's only increased over the past year due to necessity, obviously. Our recommended approach would leverage this knowledge and experience we've already gained before the pandemic and through the pandemic to continue to engage community members throughout the process, in addition to coordinating meetings with staff and the working group through a variety of both virtual tools and in-person formats, customized to best fit the community and work best in terms of facilitating the most public engagement throughout the process. Next slide, please. If you've reviewed, I know you've reviewed the document and our proposal. Kind of what was unique to us was that we thought we could do this well under the budgeted number of $100,000. And with that leftover money, we want to provide the opportunity to assist staff with other tasks, leveraging our extensive experience, as Mike had mentioned. Examples of these opportunities could include assisting with the adoption process, the development of the zoning map, public engagement participation, addressing the new sign ordinance case law, in particular the Reed v. Gilbert decision. Next slide, please. And then finally, we want to wrap up here today by talking briefly about project examples and highlight some of those recent experiences that we've had completing zoning rewrites for comparable communities to Middleton. This includes recently the cities of Wausau, Oshkosh, and Fort Atkinson. Each of these communities have relatively new interstates or highways on the community's edge with significant new growth surrounding them. They also have evolving downtown areas and waterfronts very similar to Middleton. Next slide, please. First, we'll start with Wausau. We worked with a very experienced city planning staff, very similar to Middleton, and completed a full zoning rewrite for the city in 2019. This included multiple unique zoning districts for different scale downtown development types, commercial and mixed-use development opportunities, in addition to tiered multifamily districts to provide flexibility and opportunities for development to be facilitated at varying different densities. We also developed a transect map, which you can see in the top right corner there, that translated the city's 2017 comprehensive land use plan into the new zoning districts that were created. Additionally, as Mike had mentioned, in 2020, this project received the Wisconsin American Planning Association Award for Best Practice in Zoning. Next slide, please.
And if you could wrap up in the next minute, that would be great, please.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes. Highlighting one more community here is Oshkosh, which we completed in 2016, specifically addressed issues related to student housing, design standards for flexibility but enhanced community aesthetics, and then special river and lakefront districts geared toward high quality redevelopment and mixed use opportunities. And then finally here, the last slide, please, is Fort Atkinson. We just recently completed this project in 2020. Through this project, we facilitated over 8 different public meetings to guide the policy and decision-making throughout. However, this process was significantly impacted by the pandemic and required to be adapted on the fly. We successfully navigated the situation and utilized multiple different virtual meeting tools to continue the project's momentum and get the ordinance adopted in early fall of 2020. Now I'll hand it off to Mike to conclude. Thank you.
So this concludes our formal presentation. As you can tell, our entire team is well qualified to meet your needs. We're looking forward to fielding any questions you have for us.
Okay, Kurt, go ahead.
Same question, just to keep it fair. As you know, our recently adopted comprehensive plan has a zoning category for established neighborhoods, which encourages more gentle density or missing middle 2 to 3 unit buildings, townhouses by conditional use. Can you give us a specific example of a zoning ordinance you've worked on that accomplishes those things recently?
I think a key to accomplishing that in a diverse city that still has really solid neighborhoods, but is subject to metropolitan level redevelopment pressures, is to have a wide variety of residential and mixed use zoning districts that can be customly applied to the zoning map to respond to different contexts, including adjacent neighborhoods, but also to be directly linked to the land use categories on the comprehensive plan's future land use map. So we know that consistency is being delivered as required by state law.
Thank you, Mike. Jennifer.
Yep, so I'll also ask the same question. Middleton has several different mixed use areas. One is urban mixed use, and I'm curious as to how you'll address concerns like PDDs and looking at those districts and trying to identify specific applications for those different situations.
That was an important concern in Wausau. And Ben, could you describe our approach with the urban mixed use category in particular, and the districts around the downtown core?
Sure. I'll start with downtown. Within downtown Wausau, there's varying levels of density, in particular, tall buildings, multiple stories, 10 plus, directly adjacent to historically significant Main Street type development, directly adjacent to a sort of transition area. And so what we did is we applied directly to those three different areas, three different zoning districts, which facilitated and continue to allow those three districts to be unique in character, but also function together. They had developed over time to have a concentration of one next to another. And so we wanted to continue to allow those, but we wanted to create the ability for the taller buildings to continue to be, facilitated, in addition to remaining, keeping the kind of more Main Street downtown vibe in that particular area allowed with the kind of higher historic components related to the ordinance in place. In terms of redevelopment areas throughout Wausau, because it is an older community, there's a lot of different areas that are kind of in transition, if you will, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. So we created several different districts, one oriented to more of the kind of more typical suburban type development that's occurring kind of at a different scale than would be a redevelopment area, which we built in more flexibilities in terms of setbacks, in terms of the amount of impervious surface, to kind of allow for some flexibilities in the redevelopment that would occur, in addition to land uses, obviously, as well. And so utilizing those two districts, we also created a suburban office district. So it distinctly was surrounding this medical clinic area that had a lot of significant office area or kind of uses that were distinctly different from those two uses as well. And so we used these multi-tiered districts to kind of facilitate and continue to allow the development that are seen in certain areas, and also protect and allow the kind of transitions between them to occur.
So in a nutshell, your current code certainly doesn't have enough zoning districts for the variety of development character that you want to achieve in Middleton, or that you're currently getting, and hence you have a plethora of planned developments. By having more districts and multiple optional districts for each conditional, each land use category in the comprehensive plan, we can get you the same level of high quality development without so many planned developments needed to accomplish that.
Thank you. Next one is John Schaefer.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the non-static, because we can talk about the little zones and districts and all those things. And I have an historic house, but my front yard suffers from the traffic that comes from the commercial district 1 block away. And when we put all these different things in the zoning, talks about we want to be consistent with a neighborhood, it doesn't really think about how one neighborhood bleeds into another neighborhood. So to what extent do you take into account, as you look at these factors, is how neighboring neighborhoods or neighboring contrary zones are going to interact with one another?
Well, John, it's harder now to deny conditional uses in Wisconsin. The onus is on the city to prove a conditional use should be denied, rather than the developer to prove the conditional use should be approved. And that's particularly problematic in these tight redevelopment corridors like Century Avenue or University Avenue or surrounding the downtown area. So by shifting the conversation from conditional use or planned development to requiring a zoning map amendment where, you know, the city legally can deny a zoning map amendment because it's Thursday and not Wednesday. It's very easy to be very protective of nearby neighborhoods when you are implementing the comp plan through zoning map amendments rather than conditional use or plan development.
Thank you. Well, I've asked the last question. What is the single most important thing in zoning rewrite and how would you achieve it?
Jackie, why don't you take that question?
Well, I might be biased, but my thought is to get the code up to date with current state and federal law. So in a lot of places, the code isn't current with what state and federal government are saying communities can do, particularly related to the sign ordinance, but other sections as well. So I think that's a big important priority for this update. Mike, did you want to add anything?
Well, you know, it's not only the state and federal law, but we've had a lot of case law in Wisconsin over the last 7 or 8 years. And that's changing every year. And, you know, we want to start the code being fully up to date with those requirements. And it does some digging to understand all of the case law implications in particular.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and thank you to your team and Mark. So we are on to our last present. Thank you. You stayed in time. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so Mark.
Yep, the last team we're hearing from tonight is ZoneCo, and they submitted their proposal in partnership with Urban Assets. And I don't know who all from that team is here. If they could introduce themselves, I would appreciate that. Sean, I think.
Yeah, I'm here.
Sean is here. I see him. Oh, and I see Jocelyn now too.
Jocelyn, hello.
Yep.
Anybody
Anybody
else?
else?
Marcus, I believe, from Urban Assets. Marcus is on the line. There he is, Marcus Pearson.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity for us to introduce ourselves and talk with you tonight about this project. I'm here with Jocelyn Gibson, senior consultant from ZoneCo. I'm Sean Suter. I'm lead principal and founder of ZoneCo. And we're also here with Marcus Pearson with Urban Assets, our local partner on the project. Are we running the PowerPoint or are you running the PowerPoint? Should I share the screen, my screen? Or?
Yeah, I don't think we have the PowerPoint.
Okay. I'll
Yep,
just
so go ahead. Yep.
I'll run that. Sure. Okay.
Yep. We'll start your time. Yep.
Great. And I will put that on. Okay. Should be able to see that.
We do.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. See if I can advance that. Just wanted to introduce our firms. Like I said, I'm the principal and founder of ZoneCo. ZoneCo combines law and planning knowledge and experience to craft custom-tailored, clear, consistent, user-friendly, equitable, very key to us is our work with equitable zoning, and defensible zoning codes for communities of all sizes across the United States. Our sole focus is zoning. We don't do any other planning. We don't do any type of urban design, landscape architecture, any of that. Our sole focus is in writing codes, and that's what we do in communities across the country. And we team up with local, very well-respected firms in all of the places where we work. And in that case, that's Urban Assets. So I'll let Marcus introduce his firm.
Cool, sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to take too much time here. My name is Marcus Pearson. I'm a planner in the urban, or I guess outreach specialist at Urban Assets. So Urban Assets is really a mission-based consulting firm located in Madison. I'd say 95% of the work that we do is right here in the region. We've worked with the different surrounding municipalities. So we actually have, I'd say, a wealth of local knowledge and experience working on a variety of high caliber local projects in a multitude of different disciplines. But the majority of our work is actually conducted with area municipalities, as I mentioned, including housing code updates, comprehensive planning, area plans, transportation initiatives, and also economic or commercial development, including mixed use and multifamily housing projects. So I think that our team really brings a unique perspective with our local knowledge, but also, as we mentioned, ZoneCo really just does this kind of equitable zoning work. And given I guess the existing circumstances for a city of Middleton, I think we'd be a great fit to really bring in some kind of fresh breath to everything. So our mission at Urban Assets, when we do our engagement, our mission when working on any project is to achieve increased equity through innovative, equitable, and effective engagement methods with the aspiration of creating vibrant, well-served, and socially integrated communities. And I know, social integration and land use integration, a question came up earlier. So that's definitely something that we focus on.
Excellent, thank you, Marcus. Our project team is made up of myself, project manager for the project. We will have Melissa Huggins, AICP, a principal of Urban Assets. She couldn't be here tonight. Jocelyn Gibson, senior consultant. Jocelyn has big city planning and zoning experience, and also private sector real estate experience with CBRE. So she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the project. Marcus, who you just heard from. And then we also have an urban and environmental planner on staff who is focused on sustainable zoning as well as other zoning matters. And his name is Nolan Case. So he would also be on the team. And we also do quite a bit of historic preservation work, preservation consulting. So that is, I know, something that is important to your community. So what is our zoning philosophy that we bring to the project? I think, as you can see from all the teams, any one of the three teams can rewrite your zoning code. That's really not, that's obvious that everybody's qualified to rewrite the zoning code. But I think it's the zoning philosophy and the methodology that we bring to the project that sets us apart and how we do it. So in looking at zoning codes across the country, our philosophy is that zoning codes should regulate only what really matters to the community, right? So over years, the zoning codes have been layer caked on, regulation piecemeal updated over time, and yours is no exception to that. And what happens is you end up regulating things just for the sake of regulating things. So we need to peel back the onion, and we need to deconstruct your current zoning code and say, okay, now what is important to Middleton now in 2021 and beyond? We look at your comprehensive plan. Obviously, that is your vision for your community, and it has to be consistent with that. And we really need to peel that back and say, okay, now let's build back regulations that are clear and consistent, user-friendly, but also achieve the vision. Get us to the point where we can reduce the barriers in Middleton to achieving the type of development outcomes and the type of community we want. That's why one reason we think our equitable diagnostic is so important, to make sure that we are building back regulations that will get us to achieve the type of community that we envision. We don't believe in just throwing everything out and starting over, though, right? And disrupting the whole city. That's not what we're coming in to do, right? So we need to respect existing development patterns, respect existing land uses, and at the same time, create regulations that reflect desired outcomes and focus on what matters most. We also believe strongly that the zoning should promote equity, both racial and economic equity, and the health of environment. And we know the zoning history of creating inequitable places. So we don't want to put back a zoning code that fosters inequity, right? So we want to put back a zoning code that's going to achieve the type of community that you all envision. We do believe that our mix of local knowledge, national experience, and knowledge of best practices will be important in this project, and we bring all that to the table. I think what makes us unique is our focus on equity. We're working with communities now to perform an equity diagnostic. We have an equitable zoning advisory committee of diverse professionals from around the country who are looking at issues of equity and justice in zoning, whether it be social and economic. So that is something we're focusing on and bringing to each of our projects, in that we would literally diagnose your existing zoning code to determine how it is or is not achieving your equity goals, whatever those might be for your community. Also, we have a focus on the environment. Sustainable zoning is an important component of what we do, making sure that whatever we do from a land use and development standpoint leads to a better and more sustainable community. The law, obviously, I am a lawyer. I'm not a Wisconsin lawyer. I'm not licensed there, and so I don't pretend to be an expert in Wisconsin law, but I do have, I'm a land use attorney, and I do understand, the law around land use, federal law and whatnot. So I wouldn't be bringing, you wouldn't be your lawyer, but we do bring that legal background to all the projects that we work on, assuming that you have a legal representation for your city. We talked about our local, regional, and national reach and experience. So our team works generally on communities, average size of around 35,000. Most of the communities we work in are suburbs or ex-urban communities, or directly adjacent to larger metropolitan areas or within metropolitan areas. And the average population is around 35,000. So, we've worked with communities as small as 7,000 or 8,000 and communities as large as 800,000. So it runs the gamut, but generally speaking, it is what we would consider a first-ring suburb or a suburban community. We have a lot of experience with transit-oriented development, which I think is important for Middleton in creating either areas that take advantage of bus rapid transit or light rail lines and stations that are existing or planned. So we're doing that right now in multiple communities, one in Pennsylvania, one in Ohio, and one in Virginia right now. So we do bring an environmental planner to the projects, our historic preservation experience and expertise, our equitable work. We also have airport zoning experience to the extent that that's of interest to you with airport. We do a lot with infill development and adaptive reuse, especially around the COVID-19 use adaptation. That would be office buildings that may or may not be full anymore, or may not be highest and best use as office buildings. So we've been working with communities on how to create flexibility around those spaces that were designed for specific purposes, whether it be a mall, shopping center, office, or whatnot, and how to create that flexibility to breathe new life into those buildings. I mentioned all of our zone co-professionals have worked in the public sector administering zoning, subdivision regulations, and so we bring that experience. We've sat on your side of the table, and we think that's an important perspective. And bringing in our partner, we have that local knowledge and experience of Middleton. So what makes you all unique? Really, you cannot do one-size-fits-all zoning in a place with the diversity of land uses and natural features that Middleton has. So you've got all kinds of things from urban, suburban to rural all in one place. So you have that transect. There's a high quality of life, amenities, robust park system, local and regional commercial and strong employment base. You have a historic character. You have this proximity to Madison, future BRT connectivity, University of Wisconsin being nearby, lots of growth. We sat through a couple of your earlier cases. It looks like large developments are coming. And I don't think that one size fits all Euclidean approach that you have now is working or will work for you. And I don't necessarily agree you need to increase districts. I think you actually need to decrease the number of districts and focus on geographies, focus on the development patterns, focus on creating districts around the unique places and character that you have. Because one size fits all, a menu of zones is not going to work as effectively in Middleton because of the diversity of your land use.
If you could, sorry, if I'm just giving you a 1 minute, or if you could wrap up, please, just like the others, we gave the same.
Absolutely. Sure.
Thank you.
So our approach, similar to the others, is a module-based approach. We start with a diagnostic. Again, it's important to assess how your current code is or is not advancing your current vision and your comprehensive plan. We go through every line of your zoning code and do that analysis and score it so you can, it really illuminates what is getting in the way of achieving the vision. Then we calibrate standards specifically to the districts that we create with you, and so that those standards will achieve the unique character and desired development outcome in those districts. And then we codify the code, obviously. Engagement. Marcus, do you have just a second on that? We could jump in.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So yeah, I think, you know, with the last slide, we don't have to go back, but yeah, really diagnosing, calibrating, and codifying, you know, this process where we start with deconstructing, peeling back and analyzing the current code really deeply. And then we also like to start with some pre-outreach and communication, you know, different methods. So we would have a website, you know, we'd have flyers, different ways to make people aware of opportunities that are upcoming to participate in this, because this is really a community plan, you know, and we need everyone on board to make sure it reflects their needs. So then when we really look at engagement, increase and sustained equity will be the main driver of our proposed engagement process. This will happen through broad public outreach as well as targeted engagement, especially to members of traditionally underrepresented populations and the organizations that serve them. So really collaborating and partnering with organizations and really taking a grassroots approach to our engagement process is really what we've seen work very well, especially when we're doing something like a you know, zoning ordinance update or an area plan or something that really is all about the public well-being. So this project team actually has a proven ability to reach and connect all members of the community, inclusive of age, race, cultures, genders, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. The goal is to really develop a zoning code, as I mentioned, that successfully reflects a range of community needs, concerns, and priorities. And we do plan on using a mixture of a mix of online, print, and in-person tools and strategies to really build broad community awareness and promote equity, transparency, and collaboration throughout the planning and engagement process. Additionally, what we like to do and what really helps out with these sort of processes is throughout the engagement process, the team will track participant demographics and evaluations to understand who is missing from the table. So we really don't like to put forth, we definitely will put forth a public involvement plan, but we like it to be malleable in a way that if we are missing someone or you know, there's underrepresentation from a certain demographic, we definitely you know, would conduct more targeted engagement, and that can include things like small group meetings. So this method of engagement actually puts an equity lens on the process by seeking diverse perspectives. And I think you know, I think
Marcus, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off. We've given you quite a couple minutes more than the other speakers. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I think we need to end it there so we can get to questions out of fairness.
Thank you.
Okay.
Should I stop screen sharing then? Let's see here.
Okay, so we are on to questions, and Kurt?
Yep, same question. Our comprehensive plan designates most of the city as established neighborhoods, but we're looking for that kind of gentle density, missing middle, 2 to 3 unit, perhaps townhouses, you know, where appropriate by conditional use. And just give an example from your work where you've seen that type of zoning ordinance be implemented or successful.
Absolutely, it's a great question. And we see it in every community we work in. Diversity of housing is so critical, not only for aging in place in the community, but also attracting young professionals back to the community after they go off to other places and attracting them back. But it's also important with respect to affordability, making sure that there's a diversity of housing options so that all types of different groups of people across the spectrum can live in Middleton. So you have great stable neighborhoods right now. I say, as in a lot of communities we work in, leave them alone. There's nothing really that needs to happen in those places. Where we need to focus are those areas where there are opportunities for infill development, redevelopment, or change. And I would recommend, especially along your corridors, creating development pattern-based focused character districts along those corridors that would allow you to really zoom into those areas and regulate to those desired outcomes. So if you want to do a 4-story apartment building, or you want to do a 4-unit apartment building, but you don't want to change the residential zoning so that it impacts all of the residential zoning in the city and has unintended consequences, then one of the approaches is to really zero in, create a district in that specific geography where that makes sense, and then zone accordingly for that type of housing. That way, again, you do so without impacting the single family neighborhoods that are functioning, it seems, fairly well. But you're at the same time introducing new land uses. We've done that in many communities. I would point to Reynoldsburg, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus, where that's been very successful in that approach. I could name a bunch because every community that we work in is asking for that exact same thing.
Jen?
Yeah, I think you've answered my question on in a land use area like urban mixed use, what your approach might be. You kind of just answered my question on that in terms of things like planned development districts and the specific and unique constraints or situations. But one facet I'm curious on with this in regard would be, how would you engage the public in an area of urban mixed use? What would be some of the strategies you would use to get some feedback on the different strategies you propose?
Engaging the public, I think we have to start with the map. And a lot of times in zoning code projects, we end with the map, or at least we used to end with the map. And that's when the public really comes out, right? Is when they start asking, well, how does this impact my house? So I think you have to start with the map and get the buy-in at the beginning of the project to say, okay, here, how do we look at the city differently? And you've already done some of that in your comp planning process, but let's take a look at the city. Is the city a list of zones, or is it actually a list of, or a grouping of unique places that fit together? And then how do we regulate those places to the outcomes? So how do we identify those different geographies that are unique and then focus in on those? It becomes a lot easier to engage the public around that kind of thing, because then you're engaging those people specifically in that geography who are interested in that specific development outcome in that place. If you set it up based on development pattern districts. But at the same time, obviously, you're engaging the entire community around it because everything does fit together. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess I just had something to add. So, I mean, at Urban Assets, you know, our main objective is really meeting people where they are. So just like you said, you know, Sean, it's really just about going into that specific community, setting up a small group meeting, you know, of community leaders and other, you know, stakeholders of the community, and really just speaking to them. And I think, Mr. Mayor, I think you mentioned this, that, you know, different viewpoints do make a difference. I think it's always good to have the more targeted approaches, but it's also good to have the different conflicting viewpoints that we can come to a consensus. I think, you know, there are a lot of more technical, you know, modifications we can make to the zoning map to address some of this. But I think just working with staff and also educating the existing homeowners in the area or the residents to help them understand how the change in the land use regulation might affect them, or you know, and most times it's positive, but it's really just about them having those immediate kind of concerns and us relieving them and bringing everyone together so we can kind of you know, synthesize that down in a way that, you know, works for everyone, or at least works for most people.
Thank you. John? John Schaefer?
It looks like he's actually, oh, there he is.
John Schaefer. I don't see him. I guess something happened. Huh? Abby, you want to see? Well, I will go ahead and ask my question.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Mayor? I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Well, what is the single most important thing in zoning rewrite and how will you achieve it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mr. Mayor. I think the most important thing in the zoning rewrite is making sure that the current vision comes through the code. You want to be able to look at the zoning code, open up any of the districts, and without ever having come to Middleton, without knowing anything about it, it should become very apparent through the simplicity and the graphics and the regulations, exactly what's desired in that specific district. So I think making sure that the planning, the good planning that you've done, comes through very clearly through the regulations.
Thank you. Is John Schaefer there? Is someone else from the commission or the council want to ask fourth question?
I'll ask John's question because he lives in a historic home that's very near a commercial district. So he's worried about the transition between redevelopment in commercial districts and the kind of historic neighborhoods. So how have you worked with neighborhoods and incorporate their concerns on that type of issue?
Absolutely. So historic neighborhoods have additional protections, but that doesn't mean that the neighborhoods around them can just be a free-for-all. So, because that also impacts the historic neighborhood. I think that's the crux of his issue. So it's really important, especially when you're drawing those boundaries around those districts, to make sure that you're doing so in a way that draws the boundaries properly around where those impacts might be, and then creates standards that would affect the entire district. So again, back to the districting concept, I think I think what he might be experiencing is a kind of an impact of one-size-fits-all zoning. So the zoning either adjacent to him or in his community is not tailored closely enough for what's going on in that specific place. And so I think that's really going to be the key, is getting more granular in those specific locations that require more granularity to the regulations.
Okay, thank you, Sean and your team. And we close that part of the meeting, and now it's the discussion in the
Thank you all.
Plan Commission.
Yep, thank you.
Who to
Thank you.
select.
Mayor, do you have a preferred way you want us to do this? Each person rank order it, or?
Well, do you want to just have a discussion up front, or you can? Okay, well, there's the one hand.
Whatever you want.
Randy Bruce. Randy, go ahead and let's see what he has to. Well, yes, maybe Kurt, go ahead and finish what you want to say, and then Randy Bruce. So
I was done. Yeah.
Okay, Randy, go ahead.
I guess this is for the commission members and the mayor both. When the RFP went out, we had established a scoring strategy to rank proposals. Are we still using that point system, or are we beyond that at this point?
I guess I would answer. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
I thought that was a question for staff. I'm sorry, Mayor. You want me to answer it?
Well, you can express your opinion, so that's
well.
Okay.
I mean, I was actually going to defer to the Plan Commission, because we went through the process that we described in the RFP by having the zoning work group convene, and then and I'm sorry, I've got an unruly cat. we went through the process and made a recommendation, and then at the last meeting you requested to hear from all three applicants, which was very helpful, I think, to hear these speakers today. I do think it's important to be bound to focus on the ranking, the criteria, and have the selection, have that influence your decision. I think that's important because that's what we promised in the RFP process, and we should continue with that. But that said, we don't have any scoring sheets prepared today for you to use that. If you each did that yourselves, that's wonderful, but we don't have that set out here for this meeting. We were looking to you for your guidance for how you wanted to proceed, given the direction you gave us 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so how about if each one of the commissioner, how do we send you the ranking then? Is that how you want to?
Mayor, there would be three options. One is to defer decision tonight, ask each person to submit their ranking independently and have staff tally those. The second would be to kind of ad hoc on the fly, all of us kind of say which firms we ranked ordered. Or the third is to take the recommendation of the zoning ordinance rewrite group that they all independently scored these. And although we didn't get their scores, we got their rank orders.
Okay, how about if we go with the first? Defer it and we all send our rankings. It does delay it.
It's, I think Mike Slavish has his hands up.
Mike Slavish.
You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, sorry about that. All great presentations. My opinion, I would defer to staff, not that, we don't have opinions on this, but, in all reality, Abby, Daphne, Mark, you're the ones that are going to be working with this team, over the coming months, and, the work and, Randy, to your point, the scoring criteria that we established. Obviously there was a lot of thought and time put into that. And, my personal opinion is I would defer to the staff recommendation based on the criteria that was established, one, and two, that's really the team that's going to be working with whoever we select here.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Well, and just to clarify, the point is that the zoning ordinance rewrite work group, which we call the ZORG, that included Randy representing the Plan Commission, someone representing Sustainability Committee, and then the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I see Randy has his hand up, so I will yield to him.
Randy, go ahead.
I wanted to thank all the participants or all the respondents to the RFP for their great work. I was very impressed with the quality of the proposals and the quality of the firms that were involved. Certainly, being on the work group committee, I think everybody in that committee felt the same way, that we really had some excellent candidates to select from. The decisions weren't easy to make when we did our ranking. And I thought tonight's presentations were very helpful. It was good to meet the people that would be involved. And I would also concur with Mike Slavish that the staff's really going to be carrying a lot of the load here. And I think they need to have need to be able to weigh in. Thank you.
Well, my thinking here is that we selected this city top firm. They were all great, and so we, as a plan commission, each one of us to rank and send it to the staff, and then they will tabulate it, and whatever is the outcome, that goes to the city council. We already.
Mayor?
Yep.
Can I raise a point of order that might?
Sure.
Yeah, that might violate the open meetings law if we are independently ranking them and that becomes a determination. We'd have to bring it back here for a recommendation.
Okay, I actually would like, that would be fair. And, otherwise, if we are going to go through what was already decided, why did we have these presentations? I mean, I see the point, but staff has to work with it, but that's how it is. So do we need to make a motion or?
So just to clarify, Mayor, we want to defer to your preference on this because it will ultimately come to council to decide, but your preference is that staff would send out the score sheets to the commissioners. We would fill those out and those would be public record. And then staff would then report to our next meeting what the scoring rank is. And there's general consensus that we would take the rank order.
Yep. That's what I would like. So is that okay with others?
Sure.
Jen, how complicated is the scoring in terms of the mechanisms that were part of that criteria in the RFP, Mark? I mean, it would be nice to have a decision today, I think, but I guess I'm curious if it needs to be laid out there. Okay, so I think you've got it on the screen. It looks like number 1, understanding of the issues was 20 points, relevant experience of the firm and assigned project team 20 points, project approach and commitment to innovative solutions 20 points, equity experience and diversity of project team 10, clarity of presentation 10, preliminary schedule 10, and fee proposal 10. Okay.
The way the zone, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was just gonna say the way the zoning work group, zoning code work group handled it is they each individually used these criteria to come up with their ranking. And then they shared the ranking, there was discussion and they shared the ranking, the end result during the Zoom meeting. So there was, I didn't actually collect their sheets per se. I knew what, the way the discussion went is they knew how they each ranked what the final outcome was, the ranking of the 7 firms that had responded. So, and it ended up being a unanimous first choice and then tie for second between the other 2 firms. So if you wanted to go that route, I mean, we could do that. The other complication is we have I don't know, Jen, if this is Jen's last meeting or not, but that's
no, it wouldn't be because she will have one more meeting. So the second meeting in May. So okay, well, I think let's. I know it adds 2 weeks, but we had 3 firms make a presentation, and we had to be fair to them all. They're all good, so. Mike, you want to make a motion?
Commissioners have their hands raised.
Oh, okay, sorry. Kurt?
Well, the other perspective is that our process established as a zoning ordinance rewrite work group that will in some ways be the group that will be the kind of point people, the kind of commission or the committee of committees within the city that will kind of oversee this process, right? We talked about that at council and at plan commission to keep it limited. Of course, everybody can provide input and should, but a kind of work group that would be represent the major committees that would overlook it. And the issue is treating them fairly. They made a recommendation. They did the analysis. They had a discussion. Have we seen anything tonight that would cause us to think that we should overrule them? I have not. They're all 3 good firms. But I would say that in the absence of any specific information that anyone wants to present today as to why we should delay, why not stick with the recommendation of the committee we delegated to that task? Thank you.
Okay, Randy and then Jennifer.
Thank you. You know, the reason I brought up the ranking issue is because that's what the work group did. I mean, we went through the point system, we ranked, and that's how we got to our answers. So for me, I've already done the ranking. I know kind of where I stand on the issue. I want to make sure that the other commissioners feel like they've got an opportunity to weigh in as well. The point system, if you do the ranking, I think it's important just to get to your number 1, number 2, number 3, and not evaluate the points between each of the commission members, because everybody's going to use a different scale. It's just not possible to use the same scale. So,
Jen?
I agree with Kurt that we should think about what the zoning ordinance rewrite work group originally came up with and talk about if there's something that you know, would not meet the requirements that are on the criteria here, or that we feel that there is such a firm that we should change the recommendation from that committee, which I don't think we should do. I agree with Kurt. We should move their proposal forward.
Okay, well, before Kurt, I would say that, you know, all 3 were great. And so I think considering that I can pick 2 top, which are obvious, really. So, and we are getting the same thing for $80,000, $80,700. So I sort of seem to gravitate with what the committee had recommended. Kurt, go ahead.
I was going to make a motion, Mayor, that Plan Commission recommend to the council that they accept the recommendation of the zoning ordinance rewrite work group.
Lavish will second that.
Okay, and that's $80,700. So, okay, any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. All right.
Abby, point of order. Can John Schaefer seems to have dropped off. Is there a way to ping him and see his vote? Oh, there's his video.
John?
You're muted, John.
Sorry, I had to leave for a minute. So can you bring me up on this? Sorry.
Yes, the motion is to approve the zoning rewrite committee's recommendation, because these 3 presentations did not change anybody's, well, didn't change what was recommended. And we are getting it, well, we are getting, it's very easy to see what the top 2 firms are, and we are getting that for $80,000 from Vandal. So that was the motion to approve the ZOR zoning rewrite committee's recommendation. So you are in favor, or where are
I'm
you?
in favor. Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay. So it's passed unanimously. We move on to item number 5. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to HKI. Thank you to Vandal, and thank you to the ZoneCo. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, we're on to design review of O'Reilly Auto Parts 6209 Century Avenue. Daphne?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this was deferred a couple weeks ago at Plan Commission, and just to give the applicant a chance to give us some updated plans And so I've included just some additional comments based off of their plans. And they've included the elevations, which were one of the big points where we received a lot of comments. And so based off of these elevations, I think they broke up the building a little bit more along the street facing sides. And then they also included a lighting plan. Overall, we recommend approval contingent on having a screening on the south end for the residential areas.
Okay, I think it looks much better than what, well, we didn't really have a whole lot to begin with.
No.
So questions or comments? I know some people had wanted windows. I'm sure there's a pretty good reason why they don't want the windows there, but it does look quite nice than what we had seen before. Any questions for Daphne or for the O'Reilly Auto Parts if they're here? Any, let's see. Okay, Randy and Jen. So I don't know which one was first. So Randy, you want to go first? I just see it in that order. Randy and Jen, then Jen.
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to ask if the stormwater management for this property has been reviewed.
Yeah, so we spoke with I spoke with our stormwater engineer, and they said that, you know, it seemed to have taken, they didn't have much to say about it. They are managing their on-site water, so it wouldn't need any additional review from them.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yep, my question is just a recognition here. I wanted to make sure I understood. The O'Reilly Auto Parts, that's facing east, correct?
The facade of it?
Yes.
It'll be facing north towards Century Avenue.
It will be, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Any further? I don't see any further raised hands.
Randy has his hand raised.
I think, okay, so Randy, go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to lower it.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? Okay, need a motion to approve with the 4 conditions on it.
Schaefer makes a motion.
Okay, with the resolution of engineering comments, adding screening from the parking lot for the residential units to the south and providing a bike parking on site, and staff approval of future signage if the plans follow the city sign ordinance.
That's correct.
Need a second.
I will second. Paulson.
Okay, second by Kurt Paulson. Any further questions or comments? Please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised. And okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the design review for O'Reilly Auto Parts 6209 Century Avenue with those 4 conditions, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to item number 6. This is simply certified survey map creating outlots 1 and 2 along Pheasant Branch Creek between Deming Way and US Highway 12. Mark.
Yes, this is a project that arose because of the flood, the damage from the flood and the creek repair that's needed as a result. My goodness. Abby, maybe you could describe it.
Yes, so as our public lands department was looking to go in and perform repairs and also maintain the properties, they learned that there are quite a few areas within the city where the creek corridor, the city does not have adequate width in order to actually maintain the creek corridor as we need to continue to do. And so we have been reaching out to property owners along the corridor, and we have gotten a lot of cooperation. So I just have to thank developers and property owners within the community that understand the importance of the conservancy in the creek corridor and the city's need to protect it, because to date we haven't been asked to compensate any property owners for the land that the city will be receiving. So this is just a CSM to enact some transfer of property to the city.
So I would say this is very important to the city, and we have to fix that channel. I make a motion to approve. Need a second. Okay, Kurt, you have a hand raised?
I'm waiting for, I'll second,
Okay,
but I
Yeah,
do have
this
I do have a question.
go ahead.
Just for future notes, when there is an outlot on a certified survey map or a subdivision map, do we usually require that to be dedicated to the public or to the city?
Abby?
I'm not sure I understood the question either. Do we require the outlot to be dedicated? The
Or
answer
does
is
the
no.
outlot? No, okay.
No, we have, like, for instance, Pheasant Branch Ridge up in, you know, that had a large outlet 3, and that was maintained privately.
Maintained by the homeowners association. Yeah.
Exactly. If that was your question, Commissioner Paulson.
Right, but
outlets are-
if it abuts a feature that the city will want to kind of maintain, do we require dedication? I mean,
are you asking as a matter of policy? I mean, I
yes.
think that's a good idea to do that. I don't know that we've always required it, but I think that's a good idea.
But anyway, we do think it's very generous of Fiskars and Spectrum to agree to this.
So Kurt, we did go through the legal process, and Larry did express his opinion, and this is the outcome of that. So, and I want to say thank you to Mike Davis. He worked very hard for these folks to get this done, and probably Mark and the others helped too. So, okay. Any further questions or comments? Otherwise, the motion is to approve the certified survey map, creating outlots 1 and 2 along Pheasant Branch Creek between Deming Way and US Highway 12. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Now we are on to the final item, which many people have been waiting for, I'm sure. So this is the concept review, updated multifamily development, vacant Captain Bill's site. It's a T5 Real Estate Solutions 2701 Century Harbor Road. And I know the Randy Bruce is abstaining. Okay, so who's going to, Abby?
Yes, I don't have much to add to the staff report, and given the time, I'll just quickly note that we did receive 3 written comments. We don't have an organized public hearing. We don't do public hearings for concept review, but I did just want to mention the 3 emails that the city received. One from Michael Williamson at Century Harbor, who is the condo's committee chairperson, designated spokesperson for this project. And the condo felt the project's too large, incompatible, and they would recommend no development that exceeds 3 stories on this lot. We also heard from Tom Yost, who also is a Century Harbor condo owner. He does not feel the Plan Commission's comments were addressed from the last meeting, and he's concerned about the scale and also had some questions about the setback. And we heard from Tom Carmen, who owns a single family home on Lake Street. He supports thoughtful residential development on this property. He has concerns about the proposal, including the location of the garage entrance, concern of noise from garbage trucks, and felt that a more appropriate proposal would be a 4-story building with the top 1 to 2 floors stepped back, and also would appreciate a focus on 3-bedroom units. Other than that, I just will go ahead and turn it over to the developer who has who came before the Plan Commission previously in March and has now revised the proposal in order to address some of the concerns that were raised.
And Abby, if I could, I just would add one more comment that I got a telephone call from Mr. Williams, and he was wondering that if there was a support for making a park there, so rather than having this development. Okay, so go ahead with the presentation. So this is Tim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to present these revised plans. In the interest of time and to echo Abby's sentiments about the late hour here, I'll cut right to the chase. We did have meetings with the Plan Commission a month ago. We had a meeting with the Condo Association, and we heard the concerns loud and clear, specifically that the 7-story proposal is too tall. The building massing is out of character with the neighborhood. There were shadow and view concerns. There were density concerns, and there were traffic concerns. And based on that feedback, we have revised our plan significantly by reducing the height from 7 to 5 stories. I would point out that that 5-story building is only 7 feet higher than the Harbor Wellness Center building at this point. We've also incorporated step-back architecture on the 5th floor, both on the end caps and on the side facing Lake Street. We have reduced the density by about 33% from 112 to 74 units. We've eliminated all the efficiencies in favor of larger 2- and 3-bedroom units. Relative to traffic, we have approved and paid for the city's hiring of its traffic engineering firm to complete a preliminary assessment and analysis of the traffic impact from this project. Also, I have had recent questions relative to our willingness to consider affordable, or I'd prefer to use the word attainable housing, and the answer is yes, we certainly will consider that. We believe this project now is consistent with the city's view of the Allen Boulevard corridor. It will take a blighted project and bring it to new life again, and it will continue the city's push for more housing units. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dwayne Johnson at KBA. He can quickly run through these slides. I know you've all seen them. It's getting late, and let's run through the slides, and then we can open it up to comments and questions.
Thank you, Tim.
Dwayne. Thank you, Tim. Go
Abby
ahead,
and Daphne, would it be possible for me to share my screen? Thank you. All right. I'm going to skip a few of these first ones. So here is our revised site plan. We are now proposing a 5-story, 74-unit residential building. This is a reduction from the previous proposal, which was 7 stories and 107 units. The main building footprint is shown here in blue, and parking is still accessed along Lake Street. The main apartment pedestrian entrance is near the northwest corner of the building. There is also a second parking entrance off of Century Harbor Road with 26 surface stalls mainly for guests, and then also an entrance into a first floor parking area, which would enter along here. Above this parking area would be a green roof area and a plaza within this area. So that's on the 2nd story. We have 20-foot setbacks to the north and to the east, and then along Lake Street is a 12-foot setback. We have also introduced, as Tim had mentioned, step backs on the 4th floor along Lake Street and to each of the sides along here. At the last Plan Commission meeting, there was some discussion about a desire for additional information related to our building height compared to the neighboring buildings. We had a surveyor accurately survey the existing site grades and building heights, which are shown here in red. You can see that our site slopes about 10 feet, 10 plus feet from the south to the north along here, and then continues to go uphill as we continue to go down Century Harbor. As Tim had mentioned, you can also see that our building height is about 7 feet taller than the office building up along Allen Boulevard and about 15 feet taller than the peak of the condos to our north. Here is our basement plan on the left. This houses 79 parking stalls, again, entered along here. And then that also has some trash and then mechanical and bike parking within the basement area. And then our first floor plan is shown on the right. Our main apartment lobby would be entered along this corner. And then the enclosed parking stalls would be within this area, which there are 21 of them. The remaining area would be a mix of 2 and 1 bedroom apartments, mainly facing Lake Street. Our second through fourth plans generally stack and are a mix of 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom, and then 3 bedroom units. The second floor is a little bit different in that it has an access point to the plaza and green roof area that is above the enclosed parking. This is our 5th floor plan, which would introduce the 10 to 12 foot setbacks along Lake Street to the east, to the north, and then again to the west. This floor would also house a community area and a roof terrace area. The setbacks also gave us a nice area to do larger plaza type private decks for the 2 beds along that area. This is a view looking across Lake Street. You can see here that the building architecture is similar to the previous version with a reduction in height and the addition of the significant setbacks along the top. We also played around with the material choices. We are still using a lighter masonry material along the bottom, which helps create a well-defined base. And then we introduced a terracotta colored brick, which helps create a distinct massing for the building. We also introduced a silver colored metal panel to highlight the corners as well as the top plane of the building. That top plane is then capped with a series of overhanging roofs. This is a view, kind of more of a bird's eye view of Lake Street. We have a significant area that can really add some nice landscaping features along Lake Street and Century Harbor. We're also hoping to introduce a city sidewalk along Lake Street as well as street trees. This view is looking across Century Harbor. The architectural themes continue along all 4 sides of the building. You can see in the foreground the 26 parking stalls as well as the entry on the 1st floor. Again, we have large areas for landscaping, tree islands, and screening. This is more of a bird's eye view of that same view. You can see our terrace area with the green roof and a community terrace along there. This was an image we put together today, requested by Abby, which again just shows a little bit of the height information of the neighboring buildings, the office building being about 914 in height and us being about 921, and a couple different views looking at that. We've also started to look at sun studies. These are within your packet, and I think they really just show that there's minimal impact and shading to the surrounding properties. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to your input and questions.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Tim. Questions, please. Raise your hand, commissioners. Okay, Kurt Paulson.
Can you scroll up 1 slide, Dwayne?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was not in our packet. Just for anybody who's watching it, this was added today, but this is actually very helpful. I think, for helping the commissioners and the neighborhood to understand, because the kind of bird's eye view with the parapet height didn't really show the context. But I think this shows that because of the significant grade differential between the condos and Captain Bill's, that once you get a little bit away from the building, it'll look more like a 4-story building than a 5-story building. I guess the only other question I would have is to the concern of the neighbor on Lake Street. I forgot his name, I'm sorry. As someone comes out of the underground parking from the driveway on the, I guess, the east side of the parcel. I don't know if you want to pull up the site plan.
Yeah.
There we go. As they come out of that driveway, would their lights shine on the gentleman's home on the kind of bend of Lake Street?
Right there, this house in here.
Yep.
I mean,
that's
I understand that's his
compromise.
concern, but there is significant tree cover there, and I'm wondering if you would
Right.
be willing to consider talking to him about maybe even installing additional tree or landscape coverage if it becomes a concern. But I think you've responded to the concerns that we had last time about showing the perspective drawing from Century Harbor Road and then the height. So thanks.
And I agree with Kurt that that wasn't in the packet, but that does show that that was very important, and it does help. Okay, any other comments? Please raise your hand. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Jan Marie.
I think that the applicant has addressed the Plan Commission comments. I think this looks a lot less intimidating. I'm not sure if I used that word last time, but it's something similar to that. So I really like the efforts and strides you've made to make the building more friendly. So thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Many of these renderings are not to scale. Is that intentional?
I guess renderings are never to scale. So definitely the renderings, these images are not to scale. It's impossible to make a.
I'm particularly interested in comparing the building to the width of Century Harbor Road.
So, okay, thank you. So, Dwayne, is that possible?
And also to the neighboring buildings that show like floating boxes on the lake.
So all of this is based off of survey data and information on the streets and where the property lines are and where we're positioning the building. So this is an accurate view and representation of
I'm sorry, this is inaccurate.
I guess
okay.
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay, thank you,
Well,
sir.
get your ruler out and measure the spaces, measure the width of Century Harbor Road, measure the height of the neighboring buildings that you're showing as floating white boxes across the lake.
Mayor, this isn't a designated hearing, and I'm getting concerned because we haven't offered the same speaking opportunity to others.
Yeah, it's not thank you for your input. It's not a public hearing, and you will be welcome to provide your input at public hearing. Thank you.
But,
okay.
But this drawing,
I know
this drawing,
comments, yes.
But it is important.
Okay, yes, sir. Could you please, yes, I do hear you, sir. Thank you. Kurt, yeah, go ahead.
I think Saeed is an architect as well. If you go up back to where you were, Dwayne, sure. That shows Lake Street, right? Not Century Harbor.
This is Lake Street, correct? And it's modeled accurately. Maybe it's the view that's kind of throwing them, but there's no way to make a rendering to scale necessarily, but it's all modeled off of the same data that's shown in each plan. So,
So Dwayne, is it possible for you to get in contact with Saeed and have one meeting, perhaps? Or well, at least to talk to him and get his viewpoint? Or
I would
the
not
only
contact.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
I don't know how to contact Saeed, but.
Okay, I will, okay, we will find some way. Okay.
If you give your email address to Abby, I will contact you through Abby.
Okay, thank you, Saeed. Thank you.
But I think we can assume that if Dwayne is a professionally licensed architect in this state, that if he misrepresents something before us, he's going to have to deal with the AIA accrediting board. So I take it at face value. Perhaps, Dwayne, though, what would be helpful is if you're looking at the condos to the east of the building, those kind of 2- and 3-story those. Could you show us a view from perhaps the first floor of that condo that you were just circling when you present the additional views? You know the one I'm talking about? Yeah.
Sure. So a view from here looking towards our building.
Yes. I think that would be helpful.
We did model all of these based off of the survey data and heights that we had, and we went out and took pictures and got it as accurately modeled as we could. So now, now that we have it modeled, we can grab views from wherever.
I think that would be the only other view that would be helpful to see.
Yeah, I was looking at those heights, and I think some of those condos which are close to sort of north side, the difference is maybe 15 feet, but the ones which are more close to the lake, I think the difference between this and those condos is really much higher, more close to like 30 feet, looking at the information which you have provided. So.
Right, like here we're 20 feet from our property line, but then the condos are, significantly further from the property.
Yeah. Okay.
And
yeah,
we will. The rezoning won't come to us until there's a traffic impact analysis done, or will you have that available when the actual rezoning request is in front of us, the GIP? Abby?
Okay.
Yes, there's a traffic study that's underway currently. It's not a full traffic impact analysis that would be required for the development. Tim had asked because the concern about traffic had come up many times from folks in the neighborhood, he had asked, is there a scaled back version of a traffic study that he could go ahead and start now before he submits his GIP rezoning application in order to start to take a look at some of the concerns he's heard from the neighborhood. So any GIP approval eventually would be contingent on getting the TIA completed and also satisfying any recommendations that might come for traffic improvements that are related to this development specifically. And there was a note, I know that it appeared on the original concept review submittal from our public works director that he would anticipate that this project is going to meet the need for, or require the need for some kind of traffic improvements. So we know that traffic is an issue here.
Especially going north on Century Harbor and turning right onto Century. Thank you.
Well, I think the traffic is an issue all around. The traffic is a big issue. The ones who are going to go to the Allen Boulevard and either try to make a left turn or even to make, I think right turn wouldn't be that hard. I have done it myself. And if you want to go across, that's almost impossible. So I think the traffic study is needed. To me, the traffic is the biggest concern here, especially having the Harbor Athletic Club there. And I don't know if we could find out that how many what about the traffic coming to this restaurant, and how much difference it would be compared to that restaurant versus this development? Of course, the timing of the people coming to the restaurant would be different than this one, but at least it gives you some sort of a benchmark that how many more cars would be coming. So I think if we could have any data from that one, that would be helpful. But the traffic is a concern to me as well. I like that there's a big improvement from moving from 7 to 5 stories, and which looked like 4. And also they reduced the units by 33%, which is pretty good. So I think, yeah, so there is and the height is only about 6 feet or 7 feet higher than that hospital building or athletic building, but it is, as far as the condo is concerned, I think the ones which are further away, I don't know. I like to look at those, same kind of a thing which they did, showing that how would they look like. I think that would be something good to see, and I think Dwayne is going to do it. So traffic still remains the biggest concern for me, and I'm sure for others too. So any other? Okay, Emily, Kuhn, and Ginny. Well, Ginny, that's it's not a public meeting. It's Emily Kuhn can speak. Yes.
Real quick. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real quick, I have heard the concerns loud and clear on the traffic. I have reached out to our county supervisor to look at if we can slow speeds down on Allen, because I asked the city about it, and it turns out it's a county road. So she is working on that diligently, and also looking on the flip side for that Century ride around Dewey, because she understands that turning area is very hard for people trying to make left turns. So just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Anyone from the Plan Commission or from the City Council? Okay, well, do you have enough input?
But just one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know this is going to sound wrong because I'm the housing guy, but I appreciate that you added in the 3-bedroom units, and but a concern John would probably have is there's not a lot of park space that would be suitable for children in the adjoining areas. So I don't think we as a city, I wouldn't necessarily try to push you to have to install 3-bedroom units. This is the type of development that may be more suitable to the 2 and the 1-bedroom units, kind of a workforce for people who want to be near the lake. But I do appreciate that you added in, looks like a couple of 3-bedroom units. So
Kurt, there's one park right on Milton Beach Road. So that's Sutter Neighborhood Park.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yep.
So it's not as bad.
And that's pretty close. Yeah.
I keep track of the parks, Kurt. I can tell you, I really care about the children. It's very important.
Alder Kuhn is nodding her head. Yes, because she lives on that road. So, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
I care about the children too. Thank you, Kurt.
Go ahead, John.
I care about the children too, but I think there are parks around here. They're not literally on the property, but there's a paucity of parks here that we don't have in other parts of the city. So to me, it's more the traffic issue that's a concern, because I think there's serious congestion issues, and that's to me. I appreciate all the reduction in size and everything, but I think the traffic is, for me at the moment, what needs some resolution.
I'm with John. Okay. Any further question or comments from the commissioners or the city council folks? Okay, then Tim and Dwayne, I guess you got enough input. That's all we need, right, Abby?
Yes, that's all that's required is input, unless the commission wants to make a recommendation.
I guess we probably want to wait until we get the traffic information. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this may be, Jennifer, you are welcome to come to the next meeting. And I'm not really sure whether I'm appointing anyone to the Plan Commission yet. I'm going through the various applicants, but and so do you want to come to the next meeting, or you're welcome?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Jen is doing a great job. She's coming to the next meeting. And now we need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yep.
One more item.
Yes.
Item number 9, concept review of the TID.
There's one more.
Where is,
Probably on the
all
second
right.
page.
Okay. Oh, thank you. That's actually very important. That's very important. Okay. Item number 9, concept review discussion of TID number 5, project plan amendment number 1. Abby.
Thank you.
How could have we missed? There have been so many TIF meetings. I guess it has been late at night. So.
Yep. And actually you did already take a look at this, and that was on March 9th that the Plan Commission discussed this and made a recommendation for concept approval. At that point in time, our staff had a few more meetings and a few more ideas. So we decided to hold off on taking this to the Common Council because we wanted to get your feedback on a new route that we're looking at taking. So what is showing on your screen is the areas that we had previously discussed adding to the TIF district. So on the north side of the city, it's the property that is Studio West, was previously known as Studio West. However, we learned from the developer today that that project will be renamed to Bell Farm. And then there's L and M just south of Studio West. Those properties are properties that we'd be looking to add to the TIF primarily for stormwater improvements that might be necessary in that location. We have the properties in blue that are west of the Beltline. The reason for the different color is that those are properties that are already in TIF District 3. We would like to overlay them into TIF District 5 to give us 6 more years of TIF opportunity in this location. These are properties that haven't developed, even though they have been within TIF District 3 for a couple of decades. And then going over to the east side of the city along the Allen Boulevard corridor, there are several properties along that corridor, including the property that we just heard about, the concept review property for Captain Bill's. We would also like to add these properties. Most of them are going to be for stormwater management. There is some conservancy land in that corridor that, and if there are stormwater improvements that the city decides to undertake, we would like to have the option at least of using TIF District 5 to help with funding those. What is changing, we had previously discussed, and I think it just came up in the meeting as a suggestion, we had discussed adding some properties along Century Avenue, using both the north and the south side of the street to get over to a couple of single family homes that we would expect would redevelop. At least one of them is a blighted property. Subsequent to the meeting and discussion with the Plan Commission, we inquired again with our TIF consultant about whether there would be any possible way for us to get down to University Avenue, because that's really a key focus for us right now. And the corridor really needs to see some investment. We've got vacancies along the corridor. And we're also doing a University Avenue corridor plan. So it would be great to have an implementation tool once we have that plan approved. So we had previously taken a look at trying to get to University Avenue along the Allen Boulevard corridor. And because of the state cap on the amount of your assessed valuation that can be within a TIF district, the percentage is a max of 12%. We're over that max. And so the only way we can add properties to the TIF is if we're subsequently subtracting more in valuation. So we didn't have enough flexibility in valuation to get down to University from the Allen Boulevard end. However, we have found a way to get to kind of the Branch Street University area. So if you flip to the next one, Daphne. Oh, sorry, these are the properties that are coming out. This is primarily Spring Tree Apartments, which has quite a significant amount of valuation. And then also Amherst Road on both sides, because those properties are all in good shape. The west side was redeveloped. So, okay, so now this is how we have created a configuration that would enable us to get down to Branch and University. We would take a route from Allen Boulevard through Lakeview Park, because it doesn't have any valuation associated with it, and also through the cemetery, which is also 0 in valuation. We would pick up the Club Tavern property, which was formerly a designated landmark, but the property owner went through the process to take the landmark status off of that property in case it would be redeveloped. And then the state has confirmed with us that they would consider Club Tavern to be contiguous with the properties across on the south side of University, because you can follow the right-of-way directly through and get to those properties. So there are several of these within this area that are not likely to redevelop. They're buildings that are, in really good condition. They are really serving a purpose. They're fully occupied. But there are some properties within there too that are in need of some additional investment. And so we would like to add these properties. We think that we're going to be really close, but we believe that we have the capacity to add these. We are also looking at another option where we could remove the CVS building that's on Century Avenue and possibly even pick up maybe one more property along University, which, the property that we're looking at is just, just west of Walgreens. So yeah, thank you, Daphne. That property right there is one that we could also potentially add if we subtract the CVS building. So what we're looking for from the commission tonight is a recommendation for concept approval to go with the University Avenue route as opposed to the Century Avenue route that we had previously discussed. And of course, we'd still have to go through the whole amendment process. We need to convene the joint review board. There's a lot of work to be done. We hope, we wouldn't be able to complete this until later this fall. This is just the first step in amending the district.
Thank you, Abby. Annie, please raise your hand if you like to ask. Okay, Mike Slavish.
Yeah, Abby, I think it's a great idea, especially in light of, the corridor plan that we're contemplating for University Avenue. I guess my only question, and there are other properties along University that you would certainly love to grab if you could. And just as an example, if you go up to Mayflower, you may know that both of those properties are currently for sale.
Yep.
And I'm not sure why, if you can run along the right of way, why we wouldn't grab those as well. And maybe there are others, again, this is kind of our first opportunity to really kind of take a look at this, but it seems to me any property that's for sale, blighted, relatively close to what staff is recommending. Yeah, and I know we're capped at how much additional, in terms of swapping out value. I understand there's a formula there. But, I would suggest, to the extent that we can, to take a look at maybe that parcel as well as any others that are, close by here. Other than that, I support this. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Mike. Randy Bruce, but you do have two properties there, Abby, do you not? Right on the Mayflower?
Yep, there are actually, I think there are 4 separate parcels there.
Oh, yeah.
And we
There
did take a look at that because I think that a couple of them at least are already on the market for sale, and we've been getting calls about them. I believe that what we determined is that the valuation that's already on those properties is too high. I'm just trying to pull it up here. So for example, the Sport Bowl property at 6815 University, that's over $1 million in assessed valuation just on its own. And then to the east, which I think is the one that has the coin and jewelry store, that one's assessed at 840,000 land and improved. And then the two smaller buildings in the back, these are all the properties that are just east of Willie Street, where Willie Street Co-op is located. I don't think that we can, I think that these properties are too high value to get them included without going over the valuation limits, is what our TIF team had determined working with our consultants at Vandal and Associates. We would look, I mean, once we close TIF District 3, which may happen before 2030. TIF 3 is scheduled to close in 2030, but there might be a possibility to close it sometime between 2025 and 2030 if we've paid off all of the existing obligations. Then we could open a new TIF district, and we are talking about focusing on the University Avenue corridor. This is just kind of an opportunity to pick up some smaller and lower value properties while we have the opportunity.
Okay, Randy Bruce and then Kurt Paulson.
I like the idea of focusing our efforts on University Avenue. It certainly is in need of some TIF assistance. I think it's going to put added pressure on the commission to get through the University Avenue study, though, because we're going to start to see proposals. And I'd like to have a plan in place, or at least have some guidance as we start to review those proposals.
Totally agree with you, Randy. And we already have a development proposal that we scheduled a public hearing for tonight. And I know of at least one other active prospect that's pretty far along. And I'm getting nervous about that timeline too. This TIF, we won't complete this process until I would say October at the very earliest, although the amendment that we did last year didn't get final approval until January. So I would hope that we're going to be well on our way with the corridor plan by the time that we're able to get the TIF amendment finalized.
Thank you, Abby. Are you okay, Randy? So
yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Kurt Paulson?
Yeah, just to Randy's point, we could, just as a policy, as a plan commission, kind of let it be known that we're not going to review any major rezoning proposals in the area where there's currently the study going on. But I guess I really like whoever came up with this to send it through the park to university. It's brilliant. Maybe they should work for the legislature designing gerrymandered districts. That's a joke. No. This is, I really like this. This is better than the Century Avenue one.
But Kurt, that's exactly what I had told the TIF team, and
right. No, but it certainly fits within the letter of the TIF law. Abby, when does the expenditure period for TID 5 end?
2030. Oh, the expenditure period ends in 2031. The TID closes in 2036.
Okay, so we have a little time. And how many amendments do we have left?
This is our first amendment.
Okay. So there's always the possibility that in 2 or 3 years, if some of the parcels have really reached full value, do another swap and go the rest of the way down University Avenue, at least through to Park Street.
Assuming we don't have any outstanding obligations on the ones that have redeveloped, we could remove them. Yep.
So, but are you looking for a motion, Mayor?
Yep.
The motion is I would make a motion to recommend concept approval of the amendment of the University Avenue additions in lieu of Century Avenue.
Need a second?
Schaefer, second.
Okay, second by John Schaefer. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for the concept review of TID number 5, project plan amendments, and recommending to the city council, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, motion passes. Now we are done. Jennifer is coming back to the next meeting. Any motion, need a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Bruce?
Okay, need a second.
Slavish will second.
All right, so all those in favor the motion to adjourn, say aye.
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 Okay, have a great evening. I'm waiting for having cake and coffee with my wife. So awesome. Good night.
Good night.